All right. Let me do a sound check right now. Let's see if you guys can hear me. You guys know I'm still halfway tech retarded. I got some guests in here. All right. All good. Excellent. Excellent. Uh, let's see. I'm going to unmute Grogneck, Johnny. You guys can go ahead and unmute yourselves. And I'm really,
What's going on?
I'm not really sure what's going on with Hollis here.
He's working on his problems.
Okay. I can't seem to unmute him. He may have to leave and come back in. I muted him, but I can't seem to unmute him now. So I don't know what's going on.
He's saying his Wi-Fi is fucked. Is what's going on.
Yeah, it might be. I'm gonna tell you now. I'm gonna kick him from studio, and he can come back in and see if it works.
All right.
All right. If he pops back in, it'll all be good. Hey guys, I've been on the Paranormies show about 3, maybe 4 times. They've done some debuts on Archaics TV. I've got the links down in the description box. They've got different things going on. The Paranormies are unpredictable, but they have promised that they will behave. Here, they've been on YouTube before, but their career was very short. So it's they're a guest in my house right now, so I have assurances that this is going to be as sanitized as possible. Although it does look like YouTube is pretty much allowing it's all holds barred now. I mean, I don't know why they've changed so much in the last 6 months, but they have. No doubt.
Right. I remember Martin was talking about that when we had both of you guys on. He was talking about how YouTube was getting more relaxed. And I was like, I don't see it. And anytime anybody says anything like we did, and it's like 1, 2, 3 strikes. We got 3 strikes in 2 days.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We still can't talk about the tiny mustache guy.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah.
And all that. Yeah, I agree. But many of the things that people were getting booted for 2 years ago, talking about certain narratives in the medical fields and all that, are now openly talking about it like it's nothing on YouTube. But you're right. The subject matter you guys are covering is still a no-no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You can't talk about YouTube ownership family. That's over with.
And the future ownership of TikTok. Apparently.
Yeah. That's all that's happening. There's no doubt.
Oh my goodness, there's so much stuff that's going on around with just the amount of censorship and uncensorship and community notes on Twitter and Elon's retweeting this guy and that guy. Oh my God, so based. And then Elon gets paraded around, because he's still a puppet at the end of the day.
Right. We did a huge mail out. Dawn's telling the community in the chat we did a huge mail out today. So yeah, because since she's been out of the hospital 2 weeks ago, we Big John came over here and it literally took all day long to get everybody's packages out. So it's
oh man,
you guys got your email notifications because our system is automated. Thank you, Dawn. I appreciate that, and that cup of coffee. I know it's probably coming.
I'm glad she's feeling better. I didn't even know she was sick. Sorry to hear.
She's never been sick. She got misdiagnosed on something. They gave her the wrong medication, and it messed up her digestive tract, and now it messed it up to the point it has to be surgically corrected.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry to hear that. You're telling me that a physician whose entire career is simply practice made a mistake? Yep. Oh my God. Yep. It's amazing. I've never heard of that before. That's amazing. Doctors make mistakes? Holy shit. No way.
Yep. Yeah. Lawyers practice too and send people to prison for long periods of time.
Right. Meanwhile, speaking an entire language that nobody but them can speak. Legalese.
Yeah, it's crazy. Speaking of languages and sponsors and double speak and all that, I'm going to show this little track I got right here. I got some more sponsors. Remember, I showed my sponsors last time. They were talking about Billy Carson and all that. This time, they're just supporting Archaics. I want to show this. I'm going to go ahead and add this to the stage and show it to everybody real quick. Johnny and Grognak, you ain't got to mute. Just be quiet while the clip is showing.
I wasn't so sure about this RKX thing, but AIX is certainly worth looking into.
I'm most impressed that Jason is not going to tell you something. He's going to show you.
RKX shows us if you record enough facts, the answers just stare you in the face.
A man who knows the facts is unafraid to joust with contrary opinions. That's Jason.
I can't have that dude on my show. You know how many guys I've had on here who are running from that dude? Be a mess.
Jason says being wrong gets us closer to being right.
You got to break free or die trying, guys.
RKX showed me how to see if there was a tater in them onions.
Listen, RKX isn't one guy against the Matrix. That's dumb. No, it's a family of souls waking up.
If I've learned anything since finding RKX, if something is true somewhere, it's probably true everywhere.
Jason said if it's true, we can see it from multiple different vantage points.
So I broke pattern and went up there and slapped that guy. Total pattern break.
If you get stumped, you got to break pattern.
Jason says you don't need to know how to read, you need to know how to think. I think that's where I went wrong.
Jason figured it out. People are smart and they can decide for themselves if something is true or not.
No, I don't have anything to hide. I just don't want Jason anywhere near my accounting files.
There's a bunch of us who don't listen to RKX. We signed a different deal. I think it's AIX or something.
Yeah, guys, that's a new one right there. New little shout out from the sponsors. I hope you enjoyed that.
That's awesome. That was the Joe Biden. The Joe Biden one was great. I love that one.
Oh man, you know what? Joe Biden told Billy Carson, said, Atlantis 12,000 years ago, even though I'm not that dumb.
Man.
That's crazy. So there's a whole slew of things to talk about all throughout the world. I'm finding that if you really want to you want to put your finger on the pulse lately, and I'm not talking about our subject matter tonight. We're gonna go deep on ancient Egypt and what it really was like, what was really happening. The pyramid. We're gonna go into Technolithic culture and stuff. I'm gonna answer a bunch of you guys' questions that I know you've prepared. I said, but before we get into that, I'm finding more and more that if you really want to get your finger on the pulse of what's going on, or even more accurate, what people believe is going on right now, Twitter's where it's at. I'm all over X. I'm all over Twitter. I'm watching all kinds of things. There are all kinds of little personality wars and people going to exposing infrastructure and exposing these. Man, it's crazy what is going on, and how the entire worldwide Jewish community is under multi-tiered assault right now. I am not saying that they're innocent. I am not saying they're guilty. I am merely stating an objective fact that across the whole board, they're taking hits right now everywhere. But I don't know if you guys have been following all this dialogue and narrative that's been going on, but it's just crazy.
We're here on X. I don't have an account.
You don't have an account on X? We have an account on X. We just cracked 1,000 followers for the first time in a very long time. We got our account back. I had to petition Lone Scum to get it back. But there is a massive amount of what they call noticing going on right now. That, like you said, the Jewish community in general, we did the stream about a month ago on the shul is in your walls. There were the tunnels in Brooklyn. Then there was the finding out that literally every member of Biden's cabinet is of the same grouping, right. And like all the things that are going on, like there's a lot. The ADL has come under fire. You've got Rabbi Shmuley going toe to toe with Candace Owens right now. You've got there's another fight I didn't expect, was Ben Shapiro and Jake Shields. That's one of the best Twitter fights I've seen in a long time. Ben Shapiro's getting wrecked, by the way. But you know, they're saying anti-Semitism is on the rise. Anti-Semitism is on the rise. They're crying about all this anti-Semitism. But if you've read like the exchange between like Rabbi Shmuley and Candace Owens, you'll see that it's literally the phrase. I believe it goes something like "crying out as they strike you."
Oh yeah. There's no doubt. I mean,
yeah. And again, they're not innocent. They're not. I mean, I'm not saying anybody's guilty. I'm just saying, like, if you look at what's going on, like, holy schmoly.
Yeah. Well, I'm not really. Hey, Hollis, can you hear us?
Oh, hopefully Hollis got his audio fixed.
Oh no. Hollis, can you hear us? No, he needs something wrong with his audio. Mic settings. Hold on. I'm trying to figure out what is going on with this guy's mic.
I have no idea. He's out. He's in the woods in like up in like Saskatchewan or something like that. He's a leaf. So
Yeah, Hollis, we're not hearing you, man. Yeah, he went ahead and back out.
okay. Well, hopefully he gets it fixed. Hollis is our new guy. So he's our new third mic. We Dogbot has retired from podcasting and he hung it up, and Reinhardt's job is extremely busy for him around the times that we record. So we're having to find fill-ins, but we had Hollis on the show last week, and it was so comfy and so natural that we're like, yo, dude, you're coming back.
That's cool. That's awesome. I know.
Yeah. That's how podcasts are supposed to be, though. Like, you're supposed to be able to just sit and BS with people and have a good time and have a good conversation. That's why we always get along, Jason. We have a good conversation. We have good, you know what I mean? That's how media is supposed to be.
Yeah, we'll do it again soon, but hope when Alt Skull can join us.
Oh, absolutely, yes. He's very sad right now. He's it's a
yeah.
He's having a sad, happy day.
Yeah, that's good. So let me remove. I got two things to remove from the studio. All right. Got you guys here. All right. So in our 5 or 6 presentations we've done together, spread throughout I don't know. I think we did 2 for Archaics TV. This is our first one on actual YouTube. I've done 2 or 3 on you guys' podcast, right?
4. You've been on, because you got to remember the one we did with Martin Liedeke. We did Flat Earth British with you guys too.
Yeah, that's right. So, okay, there's Shiva Shampoo right there. Shiva and Wendy, I got your emails. I'll get to them. Wendy, congratulations. She sent me good news, breaking pattern, pushing through, and she got a real good blessing. And Shiva, yeah, I'll answer your email pretty soon. We got issues with Archaics TV. I got several presentations getting uploaded, but we had to get some issues resolved with Archaics TV on how they were kicking subs off. It was just weird, some weird stuff. It's a French platform, so we kind of had some communications problems. We keep signing people up, and then 30 days later they're signing down. So look, man, that's not how it works. Most people who sign up for a podcast, it's automatic billing every month. Why do we have to keep putting these people back in here every 30 days? I said, I don't know what kind of podcast you have on your platform, that they must suck if your automatic system makes people pay, resubscribe everything every 30 days. That's just ridiculous. So anyway, I think we fixed that, though. We'll figure it out. So in a nutshell, we had already agreed that we were going to do this show and pretty much primarily focus on the true ancient Egypt, as opposed to the one that academia has tried to shove down our throats, and the mysteries of the pyramid and Sphinx and all that. Isn't that pretty much what we had discussed, or were there other things you guys wanted to talk about as well?
Oh no, we were going to do the pyramids. With Skull, we were going to talk about AI and the that video game phenomenon, but that's
right.
Yeah, we're going to save that.
Yeah, we don't want to do that on this one right here. Yeah.
No. So that's what I'm saying. No, we're good. We actually have a good long list of questions and stuff that we'd like to go over too whenever we get around to it.
Yeah. So for a little context, what Johnny's talking about right here, guys, is that I'm bringing the Paranormies back on the channel, but we're going to be talking about some deep stuff. We're going to be going into artificial intelligence X, different AI systems, AI interfaces through video games, which may have an ulterior motive. Some of these video games may not be for entertainment at all. They're only packaged that way. We're going to be talking about some really weird stuff going on in the AI, deep learning, machine learning community. It's something I want to give the whole community a good week in advance before we actually do that video. I want to really market it and promote it, because we're going to be talking about some deep stuff. We're going to be talking about some Rokos Basilisk type stuff. We're going to go deep into the AI phenomenon. Oh, yeah. That's another video. Right now we're going to be talking about Giza.
We say on our show that's for another episode.
That's for another episode. All right. Let's see. That's what Taylor Swift was talking about in that last clip. She didn't sign the Archaix Oversoul contract. She signed the AIX contract.
So, Jason, one of the things that we wanted to ask about on the last show was the name of Egypt, right? Because this area has been renamed so many times.
Yeah.
I remember you saying in one of your presentations that Egypt was a name for the world when it's at its end or something. It's like a title for eschatology for an area.
Okay.
Can
Well,
you
first of
expound
all,
upon that a little bit?
yeah. Let me explain, because it's a good question, Grognak, but it requires, as a chronologist, it requires me to give you multiple answers. And what I mean is you're asking me a question that literally requires me to give you an answer for different time periods, because Egypt has never been just one unified Egypt all the way through. It's been called many things during its history. And what you're referring to is eschatology now. The eschatological identifier for the end of the world is two. There are two identifiers, and it comes from the Zoroastrian Judeo-Christian eschatology. And this is Sodom and Egypt. This is what we find in the Old Testament prophecies, is what we find in the book of Revelation, that the world as a evil construct, the collective itself, not those who are making exodus and leaving the construct, but those who are staying here, the collective, they are referred to as Sodom and Egypt. Those who depart Egypt, the construct, are those who make the exodus. But this is just eschatology, and eschatology derives from older Judeo-Greek period names for these places. Egypt is not a very old name. Prior to Egypt, it was called Gopt, G-O-P-T. Gopt comes from an even older Egyptian Geb. It's also variously been called Kemet and Kamish. It's the origin of the Cometian civilization. But Egypt's never been unified. It's always been two kingdoms. Those two kingdoms are over 400 miles apart. And the kingdom, the Egypt of the north has over 130 something pyramids. The Egypt of the south does not have a single pyramid. If you want to go to more pyramids, you have to go into deeper interior Africa in the area of Nubia. And there's hundreds of pyramids there too, but they're very small and they're made very totally differently. But the Egypt of the South, where Kemet is basically Waset, Karnak, Abusir, they buried their pharaohs in the Valley of the Kings. It was just a very different Egypt. This is the traditional Hollywood version of Egypt, was old Kemet. The problem is Hollywood really loves to throw those pyramids in, but they never belonged in the interior. In the interior of Egypt, 450 miles away from Cairo, where all the pyramids are, is a Egypt that has a bunch of ancient stone cities, but there are no pyramids, no pyramid culture. None of that was there. So it's in ancient times, the pyramids were always called the two kingdoms. So when Manashtushi appeared, his name is Manashtushi on all these cuneiform documents. He was the son of a Sumerian king named Anum, and when he arrived in ancient Egypt under the sign of Neteru, he had the old sign of Neteru, which means he was designated by the locals as godlike, even though he was just human. Arrived by ship, Manashtushi was abbreviated and called by the Egyptians Menes. Menes was the founder of their civilization. But as Professor oh man, don't give me, I cannot believe I just drew a blank. I know somebody's going to name him. I know Shiva's going to name him. I always talk about him from the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. Oh, Professor L.A. Waddell. As he has shown that there was a huge civil war in Sumer, and some of the participants fragmented away, and they went into Elam and took over the cities of Mohenjo-Daro, the Indus Valley civilization. Others took to fleets and they went back to Dilmun in the Persian Gulf, and then Bahrain, the whole coast of Africa and Arabia down there, and settled the country of Magan. Then another large faction joined this guy Means, and he went to North Africa after the pyramids were called the Raised Land. The whole area of northern Egypt was named the Raised Land in the days of Means. The reason it was called the Raised Land was because an earthquake had very recently undid subsidence that had happened 340 years earlier in an event that we call the Great Flood, the day the sky fell, collapse of the vapor canopy. 340 years after that, Means appears on the coast of Egypt, and Egypt is almost empty. The entire north of Egypt is empty, but it's arable land. It's been under the Mediterranean for almost 3.5 centuries. The Sphinx was completely eroded and damaged because it had been underwater for so long, and the pyramids themselves had been underwater, but they were protected in 100-inch thick white limestone casing blocks. And about 1,000 years ago, about 970 something years ago, Al-Biruni, in his travelogue book in Arabic, he had written that when he had visited Egypt, he could clearly see the brown water stain of where the Mediterranean used to be on the two larger pyramids. But Al-Biruni wrote this over 200 years before the Muslim engineers took those casing blocks down after several earthquakes, stripped them, broke them into fragments to use them as ballast for roads, ships, and for whatever building materials they need for the Mosque of Sultan Hassan in Cairo. They also built many of the white buildings in Cairo from these stones. But what I'm saying is everything I just told you is post-reset. It's post-cataclysm. The earliest actual name we have in the historical record for Egypt is the Raised Land. After that, it's the Two Kingdoms. Prior to that, there's no references to two kingdoms. There was only one Egypt. That was Karnak, Waset, Thebes, the Valley of the Kings, all that down there in southern Egypt. In northern Egypt, it was underwater. So once it's no longer underwater, these Sumerians come in and they found this civilization. This is why the earliest Egyptian hieroglyphs, this Proto-Hieratic, is almost identical to early Sumerian. And many scholars like Weidel have published the charts to show there's a common origin. As a matter of fact, there's three. The common origin is between Chinese, Sumerian, and the earliest Egyptian pre-hieroglyph. These are just Egyptian symbols. And on a chart, when you look at the Chinese, the Egyptian, and the Sumerian, they're all identical. And this is because they all come from a parent source. This is all post-cataclysm, meaning the reason they look primitive and yet these are civilized nations is because whatever writing was used prior to this cataclysm was done with. This catastrophe done away with their infrastructure. Now they're having to communicate in primitive forms, but they're very advanced intellectually, so they come up with a system, cuneiform, by which they can rapidly communicate with each other. This is what Leonard Woolley found when he excavated Sumerian cities. There's no way a primitive people would have, the first dynasty Sumer would have never been a primitive people. What he excavated was high quality brooches of emerald, sapphire, diamond, lapis lazuli, things that no primitive people could have ever done. Minutia in the designs and the links and the chains. And his conclusion was that a very sophisticated people had developed a civilization for a long period of time somewhere away from the Near East. They couldn't have been here when they did it because these are the oldest first dynasty tombs that Leonard Woolley had excavated. And yet he's excavating technologically advanced culture that 300 years later had devolved into primitivism. And that same primitivism is what we find the origin of our Babylon, Sumer, Assyria, Egypt. The textbook encyclopedic versions of history is what we find that Hollywood shows in the movies, the what we're all familiar with. But this isn't what the archaeologists found. Our archaeologists have found the evidence of an infrastructure that was very advanced and that had collapsed rapidly. So when I'm answering a question about Egypt, is very difficult because we have descriptors like the raised land, and then that became Geb in Egyptian is Geb, the earth, but Geb became Gopt. Gopt in the Greek later became Egypt. However, in Egypt itself, it became Copt, and this is where we get our Coptic Egyptians from. So it's gone through many phases, but other nations didn't even call it by these descriptors. Other nations called it the two kingdoms. And this is what it was mainly known by. It's always been known that there was a dark-skinned race that ruled in deeper Egypt, the older part of Egypt, according to them, post-reset. However, there was a cosmopolitan Egypt in the north, centrally located at Anu. The city of Anu became On. Later, it was called Heliopolis. So this is the city closest that we know of as Cairo today, where the Great Pyramid is. This culture was considered one of the two kingdoms of Egypt too, but it was always cosmopolitan, and it was basically an enemy state to the deeper Egypt. The Egyptian racial reliefs on the Temple of Karnak show the rulers as Tamahu and Amuru, and they were Caucasian, long-bearded, lapis lazuli eyes, emerald eyes. They were very tall. They were noted as very tall, and they were noted to be a mariner race, a very different culture, different language, different race, and they lived 450 miles apart. But Hollywood is going to tell you that they were the same, that these two different Egypts were actually the same culture, and they were not. They never have been.
Listen, sorry to interrupt you, but where's the best place to find that relief? Because I've tried to look it up before, and it doesn't pop up online very easily.
Okay, the one who published all the original Karnak racial reliefs is Adolf Arman. You need to look for any books by Adolf Arman. It's a Eermann. Adolf Arman in 1910, 1920s, he was the one putting together all the racial profiles of all the people that the Egyptians knew by, and he published that information about the Tamahu and the Amuru on the. I have those notes. I would just have to find them. Big John and I would have to go through the archives, but I just remember out of my head it was Adolf Arman. He's the primary archaeologist that had published the material on different racial profiles of the ancient Egyptians.
So the names. So you're saying that the names of Egypt a lot of times are just like mispronunciations or mistranslations almost.
Well, I mean, it's just like I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that, Johnny. What I'm saying is we are trying to use names that's not the names they gave themselves. I mean, there's no difference to the Central Egyptian who's living at Karnak. Mm-hmm. When he says his homeland is Geb, it's no different than somebody 200 miles away living in the precincts of Luxor who believes that his homeland is Kemet. They are talking about the exact same place. You understand?
Right.
They're
sure,
talking.
So it's Germany, Deutschland. Like it's Germany
exactly.
here to us, and it's Deutschland to them. Exactly.
Exactly. It's 100%. It's they're talking about the exact same place. What they're not talking about though is northern Egypt, the other Egypt. It's there was one time in Egyptian history when there was an attempt to unify the two Egypts, and it failed miserably. There's only been one time in the entire history that there's been an attempt to unify, and this was done when the Grand Vizier of all Egypt was Jewish. This is in the historical record.
You know,
the Grand Vizier was under the one king we all know. We all know who he is. He looks so weird. He looks like he's inbreeding and deformed, but Akhenaten and the great capital of Egypt that was put in the middle of the desert, in between both Egypts, in the middle of nowhere, they built a capital city called Amarna. Anybody can look on a map and see that there's. I'm going to show you some maps that shows definitively the two Egypts. And in the dead center, in the middle of the desert, where there's nothing, in the 13th century, this guy, Akhenaten, decides to abandon the sun as an authority in the Egyptian, in the cults of Egypt, and he abandons all the older Egyptian gods in favor of the sun, and he changes his name from Akhenaten, which honors Amun, the hidden one, the ancient one of Egypt before the Aeneid. He changes his name from Akhenaten to Akhenaten, and now he regards the sun. He's also the first pharaoh to have a grand vizier that was Jewish. So this guy changes his religion, changes the capital of Egypt to the dead center, and he tries to unify what's called the two kingdoms in his time. Egypt was called the two kingdoms, one of the kingdom of the north and the kingdom of the south. He was murdered by General Horemheb. No one ever heard of this Jewish Grand Vizier anymore. He was probably imprisoned or murdered after this. But Amarna was excavated, and when it was excavated, it saw all this evidence of violence, and it saw how the Egyptians of the South were so offended by trying to be unified with the Egyptians of the North that they literally spent 5 or 6 years with whole crews trying to chip out all the hieroglyphics and all the reliefs ever left behind by Amarna and his wife. What is her name? Nefertiti? Akhenaten, one of them. I can't remember what the name of what her name was, but anyway, she was Egyptian because she's sitting on the throne, married to Akhenaten. However, her pedigree was not. She was 100% Amorite. Amorite is a Muru, meaning she was of Hittite Phoenician blood. So this is the same people. Now,
would that have explained the Jewish Grand Vizier?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's kind of funny because the Queen's Grand Vizier was also Jewish recently.
Oh yeah, well,
So she died,
history repeats itself.
And isn't it weird though? Kind of 2,400 years later, whatever the hell it's supposed to be. But yeah, it's kind of funny that the royal house in England still has a Grand Vizier.
Well, something happened. There was a lot of geopolitical shifts at the time, and we know that the Sea People's Federation were invading right then at the time. We know that they joined the Mycenaeans. Agamemnon received help in a mysterious fleet, a fleet of ships under the Danaan, and the Sea Peoples had come in and they were 100% against the Hittites. And we know this because the outlier of the Hittites, the gate to the Dardanelles to block all Black Sea trade from the Mediterranean and the Adriatic, was Troy. This was the function of the city of Tros in the state of Ilium. This is the background to the great 10-year war of Troy. Now, when you strip away, like academics do, when they strip away all the mythological overtones from Homer's Odyssey and all these descriptions of the war of Troy and Diodorus and Strabo and Herodotus, we're left with a trade war and a people of unknown provenance who came from the Atlantic and literally overran Egypt, invaded Egypt twice, invaded and occupied Libya. They were run out of Egypt both times, but barely. Then they turn around and they were so powerful they were able to establish 5 cities called the Pentapolis in Philistia, with Ashdod and Gath being their capitals. They were so powerful that they were able to come in and build Tyre and Sidon, and they established the Phoenician state. The Philistines and the Phoenicians appeared at this exact same time when this guy had abandoned the old god and started worshiping the sun. Then he turned around and they fended off these 2 invasions of the Sea Peoples at the same time that Troy fell to the Sea Peoples, leaving a power vacuum that the Mycenaeans filled. But these Sea Peoples were unable to fill that power vacuum at the time because of another destruction, what happened to their place of origin. This is where you enter in Plato's narrative on Atlantis. And all of this, all these moving pieces fit perfectly right here at the 13th century BC. It's at the exact same time that the Hittites were destroyed from a naval invasion in the Black Sea. Once Troy fell, the Dardanelles were open. Once the Dardanelles were unprotected, the fleets of the Sea Peoples went all the way up to the northern part of the Hittite domain of Anatolia, attacked from the south, and archaeologists have published widely what happened. City after city after city after city were absolutely overwhelmed by a people using weapons that were unstoppable. And they mowed over all the Hittites. Well, on the other side of the Mediterranean, all of a sudden, the queen, who herself is a Hittite Phoenician pedigree, all of a sudden she disappears. Amarna collapses. General Horemheb takes Egypt back from this king who turned his back on the old gods and tried to unify the two Egypts without success. And now all the racial tension is back in Egypt. That's all Egypt has ever known. The entire history of Egypt, there has been racial tension between the North and the South. And this is because they've never been the same culture. They've never been the same race. So it's a fascinating history. I document a lot of it in Chronicon, but it's one that many scholars there are many researchers who go kind of deep into this, but still it is also a political hot potato. There's still academics that don't want to go too far into it. Frank Joseph, he wrote a book about the Sea Peoples. Emmanuel Velikovsky's gone into it a little bit. These men I would look into if this is something that you're interested in. But what's fascinating is that the Amarna complex may be the origin to the story of the Israelites taking over the Canaanite cities. When actually these early Israelites came from the original Sea Peoples, these Amuru who came in here and invaded everybody and set up colonies everywhere. So this at Amarna, when they excavated Amarna, they found 377 cuneiform tablets written by Canaanite kings who were begging Pharaoh for military assistance because a strange people had appeared on their shores and was taking out their garrisons and taking out their cities one by one, and they were unstoppable. So everything we have from the archaeological record from all around the entire Mediterranean ties perfectly in with the Sea Peoples Federation invasion, which ties in with Atlantis Plato's narrative on Atlantis. It all fits absolutely perfectly and perfectly describes why this guy who tried to unify the two Egypts, probably because he feared the Sea Peoples that were coming. They had already taken Corsica, they had already taken southern Italy, they had already taken Sardinia, they had already taken the Straits of Gibraltar, Gadesh in Spain, and they had set up these massive garrisons and colonies. They were coming and everybody knew it. But this guy tried to unify the two Egypts and he was unable to do it. But if he would have been able to succeed, then history might have turned out a little bit different. But many of the elements that came down to us in the Bible, in the Exodus invasion, the Israelites going city to city, taking out the Canaanites, it's actual history, but it's from a totally different perspective. It wasn't a Moses leading a bunch of people out of Egypt overland and then spending 40 years in a small stretch of desert that you could have walked out of in 4 days. You understand? None of that story has ever made sense. That strip of land is way too small for 500,000 people to have been lost for 40 years. That's just ridiculous.
Oh, for sure. And could you imagine Jews being lost for 40 years? Like in one, come on, like the amount of complaining. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like that. Moses, now Aaron, your brother's lost again. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It'd be terrible. It'd be terrible.
So going back to Grognak's the original question about names of Egypt. All right, we do have an interesting reference in the book of Jasher, which has the most astounding chronological material I've ever seen. It's many people have studied Jasher. The book of Jasher has gotten a bad name because in Bristol, England in 1750 something, a forgery of Jasher was specifically published in Bristol. and released to the public, and it did exactly what it was intended to do, which was get it academically condemned. It wasn't the original Book of Jasher. This version had Jasher as being one of the judges of ancient Israel during the period of the judges. It was a total work of fiction. The dude sold out. He got rich writing this fake deal because rumors from the Middle East had been circulating, and they reached England about a copy of the Book of Jasher that was discovered in the archives of some underground library in Giza, Persia. And before the actual manuscript could make it to London, fake versions were published in Bristol. And ever since then, academia has had a reason to dismiss it. But the actual real versions have been found, and one of them was studied by Albinus Alcuin in 800 AD. And this was a totally different manuscript, but it mirrors the other one found in Giza of Persia. This book is probably only like 19, 20 centuries old. It might not even be that old. But what I found fascinating about it is that many of the dates that are provided in that book perfectly align with so many dates that secular dates that were put out by other cultures, other races at different time periods, biblical chronologists, secular chronologists. And what I found even most fascinating is two epic disasters that are recorded in the Book of Jasher are perfectly dated on the 138-year Phoenix phenomenon deal, and both of them involve earthquakes and the darkening of the sun. That's beyond coincidence for me. This chronological material in Jasher is fascinating. But in the Book of Jasher, we do have a reference that before the flood, Enoch was involved in a project, and it was in a land called Akuzan. And I've seen some pretty good qualified material that shows when Akuzan is etymologically broken down, it does have the roots for stock of a tree. It has the roots for altar, and it has the roots for border, all inside those consonants and syllables, those root words, which is interesting because these are all concepts attached to the Great Pyramid of Giza. And Giza itself is Gizeh. It is condensed in the Western world to Giza, but its older Arabic version, Giza, is actually very phonetically close to Akuzan. So that's just answering Grognak. That just answers the oldest I have ever found any reference to names of Egypt. Because later in history, among the Copts, we have a new reference for Egypt. It was called the land of Siriad, and this refers to those who observe Sirius, the star. This is ancient Egyptian astrology was nothing like the astrology of other nations. They were focused on the dog star. This is why Anubis became their principal messenger between the gods. And the Sphinx, even the Sphinx. I know you guys have seen my research on the Sphinx being Anubis.
Oh yeah.
You said before that the pyramid complex, it's supposed to look like sympathetic magic, lining up with the constellations. It's another way it was tricked into being completed.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been the zodiac.
Basically.
I mean, yeah, but you're right. It would have been the star patterns that were known before the Cataclysm, which would have been Arcturus, Orion, the seven Pleiades. These are the things in the pre-flood world, the pre-Cataclysm world. There was the star Regulus, the star Sirius. These are the principal things in pre-flood astrology. They had no knowledge of a 12-house zodiac. They had no knowledge before the flood of anything about Taurus, Leo, Gemini, Cancer. All of these are even after the development of the Mul-Apin. The Mul-Apin was developed 350 to 450 years after the Cataclysm, and it was a zodiac, a Babylonian zodiac of only 6 signs. Yeah, most people don't realize how new the zodiac is. The zodiac of Leo and all the 12 signs that are used in astrology today, every bit of this was imported from the Greeks into India, and Vedic scholars admit this, into Egypt. The Egyptian scholars admit this. I have a video that shows all this data on that and these source materials showing where all these scholars admit the Greeks are the origin of this, and they export it all over the world. And the reason I have been so meticulous in providing that data is because you got a lot of guys like Graham Hancock and others who follow him who are dating ancient monuments using computers, programming a zodiac in there to date all these ancient monuments when the zodiac itself that they're using didn't exist when those monuments were. That was a concept that came into being after. Anybody wants to understand ancient second and third millennium astronomy and astrology, you have to go to the Venus almanacs, because that's all the ancient American civilizations looked at, and that's all Sumerian, Babylonian, and Assyrian cultures even gave a damn about, was Venus. They watched every single thing Venus did, and they watched the Wanderers, which is Venus, Mars, and any of the planets that can be seen at any time. They've never been able to see with the eye Neptune, Uranus, none of that stuff.
Right, but
Which
it makes sense that they would keep an eye on the wandering stars, because the other ones are always there, never moving ever. So
that's right. The wandering stars were called thrones, and they were called thrones, and they could wander, and they moved around, and they were used for prophetic value. It was just you already know, it's just an ancient pattern recognition system.
Right.
Anytime this wanderer was near this, I will say this: the other main object was the moon. None of these ancient cultures gave a damn about the sun. I even revealed that in a recent video when Herodotus explains why the Egyptians did not venerate the sun anymore, why they had totally abandoned any use of the sun in their calendars. And that is because the Egyptian priest told Herodotus 450 years BC, which was over 24 centuries ago. The Egyptian priest told Herodotus that the sun had deviated from its course 4 times in their own records. This is why they were a lunar civilization. They didn't give a damn about the sun. The sun wasn't to be trusted, but the moon had never deviated its course. They were always able to plot times by lunar reckoning. So yeah, this is another major thing that these people researching Atlantis have not been taken into consideration. The Egyptian preset Sais, or any encyclopedia will show you that the Sais priesthood were using lunar reckoning, and the scholars 2,000 years ago, from Plotinus, Proclus, who wrote a full commentary on Plato, all of them mention it. Euclides Eudoxus of the city of Knidos, he mentions it as well. The Egyptians counted moons. They did not count years. Years belonged to solar reckoning, and they didn't regard it. They didn't care. So those are the only references to the actual names of Egypt, which is the raised land, Akuzan, which dissolves over centuries into Giza, and then Giza. It was called the land of Siriad for Sirius worshippers. It was called the two kingdoms, Geb, Kemet, Gopt, and Copt. These are the principal names that are found throughout the historical record on Egypt.
You mentioned that the Sea Peoples had a quite considerate, like, would it be a combat proficiency? Did they have like the Secret of Steel at the time, or?
Okay, that's an excellent question. It's an excellent question, and I'm going to tell you now. It's one of the chrono markers found in Plato. See, I've published on my channel that if you're going to date the Atlantis story, you can't just throw a date out there. He's too specific. One of the chrono markers in the story is that the invaders understood how to smelt iron. They had iron utensils. This is a game changer for any infrastructure. Anybody using copper and bronze is not going to be able to stand up against an army that is hitting them and shooting them with iron utensils. They're not going to be able to do it. An army that is outfitted in bronze, using bronze spear points and bronze arrows, they're going to be able to kill some of the enemy, but the energy output in order to hurt the enemy far exceeds what the iron using army is doing against them themselves. They're going to be taking a lot more losses and a lot more damage from somebody protected in iron and using iron than you understand what I'm saying here? The use of iron is going to go right through arrowheads and spear points are going to go right through bronze armor. Now they still got to work for it, but bronze can pierce iron, but it's not easy. It's going to take a lot more energy and a lot more work. So the Sea Peoples had had better technology. According to Plato's narrative, this was a mariner race, and they were against the Greeks. And this is exactly what we find the Sea Peoples Federation did. They did precisely what Plato said. They came in through the Straits of Gibraltar. They made colonies everywhere, and then manned them, and then turned around and invaded all these places. It is precisely, and they went to war in the Greek world. This was Troy. This is Troy in the state of Ilium. This is exactly what happened. So yes, I am agreeing that they were technologically superior. However, we're talking technology from a Bronze Age perspective. We're not talking about technology from our perspective today. That type of technology was way further back. Pre-Cataclysm, 2239 BC, when the vapor canopy collapsed, the technology on the other side of that reset was technologically advanced, maybe even superior to what we're using right now on this YouTube platform. That was technologically advanced. Whatever built the Great Pyramid was something beyond anything we can do today.
Oh, that's absolutely for sure. I mean, not just the pyramid, but like pretty much any of these ancient structures. Like we can't do any of that stuff today. They clearly had technology that we have no idea what it was, because a lot of this stuff they didn't write down. Was it you? Yeah, you were the one when we had you on last time. We were talking about how they likely used tablets and didn't actually have things written down because it was just in the cloud, right?
Right. Yeah, it's
and that's what's
there's a lot of evidence for that.
Right, and then the Sumerians tried to mimic it. They didn't know what the tablets were, so they started carving them into clay, and that's where the first writings, I guess, right? They're mimicking the tablets. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, it only makes sense to me because reading the commentaries. This is the value of reading commentaries from like Thor Heyerdahl and Lenormand and these Samuel Noah Kramer, Marine Gallery Kovacs, these people that can actually translate Sumerian. When you read the commentaries and their own thoughts on all this, it's like we're looking at a civilization that, while the earliest parts of that civilization recorded by our archaeologists were advanced, every one of these researchers admitted that wherever these people had come from, it was not the Near East. The Tigris-Euphrates basin is not where Sumer had developed. It's where it went to die. Do you follow me?
Yes, absolutely. I just realized for a second, I'd like to apologize. I didn't realize that muting my mic on my side did not mute me on your side, and I cleared my throat a few times. Apologies, guys. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I'm tech retarded, and I don't even know when I'm messing up.
I saw it in the chat. Like somebody's clearing their throat. I was like, it's me, but I got my mic muted. What the hell? Nope. Apparently, Streamlabs, you have to mute it in Streamlabs. Sorry, folks.
Oh, okay. I'm on StreamYard.
Or StreamYard, whatever it is. Not Streamlabs. StreamYard.
Yeah.
No, I did like a hardware mute, so it's weird. Anyways, sorry about that. As far as the the Phoenician, the seafaring people. Now, these are the ones that spoke Hebrew, right? Or they brought Hebrew with them. Sometimes I get confused as to what language do these people speak? These seafaring people.
Okay, okay. I'm not going to bridge Hebrew with Israelite. I'm not going to make that. I'm not going to
Right, that's fine. I mean, that's because that's not.
I'm not going to bridge that. We have Hebrew is a really interesting. It's a really interesting, not just culture, but family of man. I just got to come out and say it. Listen, there was no Hebrew language. There was no Hebrew culture. Every bit of this is a complete fiction. These people came out of Babylon. When they were run out of Babylon, they found a culture they could live among instead of being slaughtered and killed when they were chased out of Babylon for all kinds of things that they'd been implicated with. In Babylon, they were referred to as the Edomu. These Edomu was a class of priesthood that finally the Babylonians got fed up with. They ran them out. Now, when they reappear in history, they're in southern Canaan, on the edge of a desert, in the only culture that they could find sanctuary. The Old Testament calls the sanctuary Edom. It's Edom. Among the Edomites, this Jewish people emerged. They don't go back further than that. These are Babylonian refugees. This is why everything in Jewish culture, the Talmud, all this stuff throughout the Old Testament, every bit of it, the entire Jewish calendar, every bit of it is Babylonian. The Jewish days of the week is Babylonian. The Jewish months of the year is Babylonian. Almost everything it's called the Babylonian Targum, the Talmud. So, yeah, I don't really like talking about it because there's just no use. I mean, you have the entire Christian world brainwashed into believing that these people are the children of God. And according to the Old Testament, they are the children of a demon that popped out of a burning bush. Anybody can verify that Yahweh in the Old Testament is also called Shaddai. It says that specifically. And yet, anybody can also verify that the Assyrian cuneiform texts have a whole bunch of references to a race of deceitful demons called the Shidu. And where were the Shidu located? In the deserts south of Assyria. When you put all this together, you have exactly what happened with this whole story of Moses on the mountain. It's the same thing that was borrowed from the older Babylonian traditions. What did Babylonian traditions say? They said at one time there was a guy named Sargon. Sargon was a baby, and he was put on a basket, and he was floated down a river, and he was rescued by an Anitu priestess. This Sargon grew up and became Ur-Nammu. When he was Ur-Nammu, what did he do? He gave the tablets of the law to the people. So when you look at pictures and reliefs in Assyrian and Babylonian of Sargon of Akkad and his alter ego Naram Sin, what do you see? You see Sargon with a giant horned helm. In all the older Jewish depictions, what do you see Moses wearing? He wears a horned helm.
Yep.
Over and over and over, these associations, they're prolific. Most people, they just don't understand. The whole Moses narrative was 500 years after the baby in the basket story was popular in Babylon. It was already there, just like David and Goliath. Goliath was a Philistine. The Philistines were sea peoples. They were technologically advanced. They were taller. And in the Egyptian reliefs, they're 2 heads taller than everybody else. The Philistines were very tall and they were very feared. These Philistines were brother nations with the Phoenicians. And the Phoenicians themselves had spread out into Bashan and Argob. And among the Phoenicians, they had a principal title. Their captains of 100 were called Anaks, A-N-A-X. This later in Canaan spread out to Anak. Anak was the race of giants. All throughout the Old Testament, they're called the Anakim. the sons of Anak, the race of giants. So this huge new infusion of blood into the Mediterranean disrupted everything. And it was at this time in the 13th century BC. We don't have a single hint of any of these Old Testament stories that appeared later on that claim that they happened at this time. Instead, at that time in the 13th century, everybody knew. It was a syllabus. Everybody knew the story of Gilgamesh and the Great Flood and Napishtim. Everybody knew about the Tower of Babel and how the gods looked down and knew that mankind was unstoppable and there was nothing that they couldn't do. It was a syllabus. It was taught all throughout the ancient world. Everybody knew about the flood and the giants and Nimrod, the mighty hunter, Gilgamesh and Enkidu, the wrestler. They knew all about this Hercules type guy. They knew how he grew up and married his own mother, Queen Semiramis. These were common stories. But when they were common stories, there was no such thing as a Jewish people. They were Babylonian at the time, and there was no such thing as a Hebrew language. This was nothing but post-Babylonian culture, and they took their language with them. And what do languages do when they're coming into contact with another culture? They morph. Why? Because of assimilation. This is what Hebrew is. It is actual ancient Babylonian Semitic that has been assimilated into Edomite culture, which was a Canaanite branch, which is very interesting because we have many references in the Old Testament to the Jews actually being called Edomites over and over. In fact, the Jewish authority of the time during the days of Christianity in the first century, we already know they're called the Hasmonean kings. These kings, like King Herod, they ruled the Jewish culture from Edom. This is all widely known. It's just that Christianity has been programmed because they've been taught by the Judaic culture on what to believe, as opposed to what the historical record shows. What we really have with the Old Testament is a people kicked out of Babylon who took all their stories with them and then repackaged them. Then repackaged many of the modern historical events that were happening that were famous in the 13th and 14th century BC, and they injected themselves into historical events for which they did not belong. 700 years later, these same stories were repackaged again in Alexandria, and now sophisticated Jews looking in 2020 hindsight at the last 2,000 years were able to put all these things in a narrative, and they realize there's a few problems. Those problems are 1st and 2nd Esdras. Those problems were several books that needed to be removed from the canon, called the Apocrypha and the pseudepigraphical text, to make the story work. And the reason is because in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah in the Old Testament, we have a Jewish priest and we have a Persian politician who got together and invented a religion and then convinced a people who had never heard of Moses, never heard of the law, and convinced them that this was their ancient religion from back then. It is admitted, not in Nehemiah and Ezra, that they did this. Nehemiah and Ezra just tell how they did it. But it's admitted that this is what they did in the books of 1st and 2nd Esdras. Esdras is the Greek Ezra. Ezra was the one who falsified all this and literally took ancient Babylonian and world history and repackaged it, took actual Bit Umri annals, all the 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, these are real regnal lists and kings. However, they belong to Bit Umri. Bit Umri is the house of Omri. It is the true Israelites of Canaan. And when they were taken into Assyrian captivity, they weren't left behind to defend the integrity of their histories. So all their libraries were sacked. The Jews went in there and took all their cities and all their libraries, and for 210 years they were able to harvest all this material, and they literally wrote the Old Testament, removing all the favorable material about these civilization founders, these Israelite Phoenicians, and then they turned around in their own scriptures and demonized all the good guys, the Amuru, the Amorites, the Philistines, the Phoenicians, the Syrians, the Aramaeans, all the good guys, all the civilization builders, the great holy city of Kadesh, the only city in the ancient world called holy city, it's Kadesh. They turned around and demonized it because they needed to show that this insignificant city that's not even on a trade route, that has no importance in the entire history of the world, Jerusalem, they had to create a fake dynasty and a fake history to make it look good because this is where they were from. And every bit of it is untrue. This is why the magazine, which has been out for 50 years, called Biblical Archaeology Review, still has not produced a shred of archaeological evidence proving the Old Testament. None. All it can do is go back to the Babylonian occupation of Israel, of Judea in the 5th century BC, all the way to today. But everything before that, nothing. They can't find anything.
What do the Christians, what do they use as their, what is it, the Septuagint? I don't remember exactly what it is. Grognak, you might know. But they always try to go back to like, well, this is the real translation, and you've got to read the real translation to get the. I don't like arguing with these people because your version is correct.
I get it. I know what you're talking about. The Septuagint. I get it. The problem is you're still reading the same story. It just went through different translations to get where it is now. It's still the same books of the Bible. It's still the same story. So it still comes from the same origin. It just went through different filters to get where it is today. So it's still mostly made up.
Yeah. And you're
Samaritan
saying that
book.
they demonize the good guys in their history. Weird. It seems that they keep doing that. It's like the history just keeps repeating itself.
Oh, there's nothing weird about it.
Yeah, I know.
Modus operandi.
Yeah. When I mean, you invent things like this, like the propaganda. You always, if you read that, I mean, they invented spying too, right? So they're probably really good at that.
Yeah. See, we have to remember. I mean, it's very important to remember that everything is recorded ex post facto. Everything. Mm-hmm. So once you finally understand that an authoritative version of what actually transpired in the Civil War wasn't even published to the 1890s. You understand? An authoritative. Now we had General Grant wrote memoirs. You know what I mean? Other people wrote memoirs. Other people wrote books about what happened in their locality and all that. But an actual authoritative version that covered everything that was to be known wasn't even published to the 1890s. That's a problem. That's a 40-year gulf where all kinds of deceit could have been introduced. So
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the Civil War being our trademark, fake and gay. For a long time, and the more that people get into the Civil War and look at the pictures, look at the history, it wasn't a war at all, and again, like you said, 40 years later, just like kind of like the Gospels, 70 years later, it's like a lot. It always seems everything is ex post facto.
It is. I mean, and listen, spirit is like a river, and when it's flowing, you don't want to change its course. So we had set out to talk about the technolithic precision of the Great Pyramid and all that, but we seem to have deviated and gone this other route, which I'm cool with. We can talk about the Bible. We can continue this narrative if you want to. I can tell you a whole lot more about how our Bible came into existence if you want. Doesn't matter.
We can do that if you like. We can go back to Egypt. I mean, whichever way you want to go. I have been recently a lot of different channels on YouTube, not just you, but like Static in the Attic, a few other, and it's one I can think of off the top of my head, but have been going at the biblical narrative recently. Like it's like everybody is discovering that Yahweh is this desert demon, of the pillar of smoke, pillar of fire. Both of those things, neither of those things sound like a just and loving God, that would require the sacrifice of babies and foreskins and all that kind of stuff. But it seems that more and more people are starting to discover this. It's kind of interesting, and that it's being put out there as much as it is, especially considering that there's supposed to be this huge Christian nationalism uprising in the United States as well.
Oh, I predicted that 3 years ago.
I know.
I said 3 years ago, you guys are going to start seeing all kinds of signs of Puritanism coming out. You're going to see that they're going to start knocking out all these girls doing these online gigs, making money on OnlyFans. They're going to start attacking that. They're going to start taking away all these rights, privileges, immunities that we had under more liberal governments. People talk bad about liberals and all that, and I really don't like liberal philosophy or politics at all. But I do understand the freedoms that you have under that, as opposed to a Christian Puritanism that will set in and contaminate government to the point where people are now legislating that which was supposed to be spiritual. And this is the type of government we're going to real fast in the United States. And I don't think people are seeing this is a pendulum. And when the pendulum swings and starts gaining momentum, like I'll give you, Pornhub just got taken down in Texas. No one saw that coming. I've been seeing it all over Twitter. Everybody's like, "Wow, man! It's the state of Texas passed laws against pornography," and I agree with what they're attacking, because they're saying Pornhub is not keeping minors off their platform or whatever. I get it, but this is how it starts. Talking about removing TikTok. This is how it starts. Censorship always starts with what sounds reasonable, but it always ends up with chopping people's heads off because they don't believe what you believe. Christianity has a terrible track record of just killing whole villages and killing and eradicating whole cultures that don't adopt the status quo. The reason we can't ask the Cathars, the reason we can't ask the students of the Gnosis, the reason we can't even ask the Waldenses about what really happened when the Roman Catholics went in there and killed every man, woman, and child to a T is because they're all dead. Simple as that. There's no way to talk to even their descendants. They were killed to a man because they simply believed that Jesus Christ was a spiritual phenomenon, a spiritual message to spiritual beings trapped in a physical world ruled by the devil. That's all they believed. They believed that true spirit would send nothing but spirit to reveal things that were spiritual to spiritual beings who just happened to be in a physical prison underneath a false god temporarily. That's all they believe. This is the core fundamental of the Gnosis. And all these people were exterminated because that's what they believed. So you can see, we already know, I don't want to get real dark here. I've never discussed it with my own community, but we already know that FEMA actually purchased tens of thousands of guillotines. Why did you have a company even make guillotines?
Wait a minute. Guillotines?
Yeah.
I've heard about, now I've seen the truckloads of what do you call it? The plastic coffins. I've seen all that stuff. I've seen the Walmarts turned in, they're going to turn Walmarts into FEMA camps and all that stuff. I did not know that they had purchased guillotines. I know that the FDA purchased like 1.5 billion rounds of 5.56 and 9mm. Like why does the FDA need bullets?
Yeah, well, that was to keep people from actually tracing that most of those weapons caches are all spread throughout the United States, waiting for these migrants to get their Batman signal. That's what's going down this year.
Oh, definitely does. Does my audio sound any different? I think I figured out my problem.
Oh, you sound pretty good. You're clear.
Okay.
But if I ever have audio problems, my community is pretty fast about saying something. They're real fast about saying it.
Right on. I have to keep an eye on the chat to make sure that everybody sounds good. But thanks.
So, like a small throwback. I was going to say those good guys that the Babylonians turned into the bad guys. Those are basically the tribes or races that were supposedly destroyed because they were Nephilim, right?
Yeah. See, that's a Grognak. That's real. That's a real. You're hitting these deep points. All right. I don't know what your persuasion is, but I'm going to tell you now that the Old Testament story of the Israelites going in, commanded by Moses to kill children, women, and even the animals and livestock with the men, is a psyop. Every bit of that is a psyop. And the justification that is given in the religious context is that, oh, they're Nephilim, therefore they're the sons of Satan. They're not purebloods. Listen, all that is just religiosity. We have no evidence at all that angels came down and had sex with humans. That is not, that right there is totally of Babylonian provenance. It is an invention. Scientifically, we have a totally different phenomenon unfolding. We don't have evidence of angels or angelic beings or aliens coming down and having sex with humans. Anything that has copulation with a human female must be genetically compatible with that human female. Therefore, the gods must be human. So, taking that into consideration, we don't have stories from the mythological record of this type of contact. This comes from the religious texts. What we do have, though, is in 1902, two scientists exposed to ambient radiation on the island of Martinique after Mount Pelée exploded. Both of these men, 58 years old and 61 years old, they both grew 2 inches. They grew 2 inches because there is something about ambient radiation that comes from volcanoes that makes plants and beetles and insects and all the flora and fauna on these tropical islands and stuff grow so fast after a volcano blows up. It's almost like the world itself has its checks and balances. A volcano does tremendous amount of destruction, but after the destruction, it outgasses this ambient radiation that literally allows the island to rebound 10 times faster than any other area. And any living organisms that stay within that ambient radiation zone grow faster, heal faster, they're healthier, and this is in our world today. So imagine the pre-flood world. Imagine a world that ultraviolet light is absolutely filtered out by a vapor canopy that increases atmospheric pressure, which increases the amount of oxygen that you just breathe naturally. All the animals are huge. The plants are gigantic. Oxygen is everywhere. The atmospheric pressure is so intense, but you don't feel it because you're born under those conditions. And you can inhale and then dive underwater, and you can go 300, 400 feet down, and you can get clams what we can't reach today. But we know they did because we found those middens, those pearl beds. They used to do it, and they did it because the atmospheric pressure was differently, meaning the human body could take a lot more pressure deeper underwater because they were used to it, and the water itself didn't have the pressure it does today. With a decrease of pressure in the air, the pressure is increased in the water. It is just the opposite in the vapor canopy world. In the vapor canopy world, there are no ice at the poles. Those are dry land masses. And we know this because we have the maps from the 14th, 15th, and 15th century that show the islands and rivers and lakes in Antarctica. And we have commiseration from the U.S. Navy that has even said that these maps are dead reckoning for what subsurface interface radar has shown where those mountain ranges and rivers are 2 miles under the ice caps. So when you put all these details together, we have religionists who created a story to justify how gigantic humans came into existence. But in the Greek, in the ancient Greek text of Sanchoniathon and Hesiod, we don't have angels having sex with humans in order to produce giants. We just have an old world that was suddenly destroyed, called the Age of the Titans. And the survivors of that Titan world had kids. And when they had those kids, their kids were considered giants. They were nowhere near as big as the Titans. And when those giants had kids, they were normal-sized humans. So in the ancient Greek traditions, we have a single generation after a cataclysm when Typhon, which is the Phoenix, destroyed the world. When it destroyed the world, it left some Titans couldn't breathe. They died out. None couldn't get enough oxygen. The giants never feared the titans because the titans couldn't move like the giants could. They were born under the new conditions, but they had pre-flood antediluvian genetics. So they were still huge. It was when the giants gave birth, they gave birth to regular sized humans. This is the story we find also in the Sumerian records. We have actual legislation in cuneiform from when it was necessary to pass laws against the Lugalim. The Lugals were called the Big Brothers, and they were sparse and far and few between, but it seemed that they got the better of the business deals, corporate deals, signing contracts, deeds, titles for lands. All this stuff is mentioned in the Sumerian cuneiform. But they had to pass laws because as people multiplied, they kept looking these gigantic men called the Lugals. They became a problem. People were intimidated by them, and anytime in business and commerce, the Lugals always won. So it's almost like a bully effect, or their people were just too scared to actually get what they were worth when they paid for services or sold items and stuff. So when we put all the little pieces together from all over the world, this is what we get. We don't get angels having sex with humans. We get a world where everybody and everything was bigger. And then that world was gone and things got small real quick. And evidence that cataclysms are what does this, that increased volcanism is what creates giantism. More evidence is also found in the Greek, because Hesiod mentions that Typhonius attacked and Zeus took care of him and fought him off. But it began another age of heroes. How did that happen? How all of a sudden could all these giants appear that were problems all of a sudden, and these giants fought on the Trojan battlefield? Every bit of this is recorded. How did another age of giants happen when the cataclysm was way in ancient times and Typhon only appeared for a short time? Well, this is what we have, 1687 BC, the Ogygian deluge. I have 5 videos about it showing how the Phoenix appeared and created a 25-year darkness, and volcanoes were erupting everywhere. One of the main ones is known to science called the Avellino eruption. It was right then, 1687 BC. This is what brought the new age of giants back. Didn't bring titans, but it brought a new age of giants, but it was short-lived. And humans were already there were so many humans that it was relatively easy in the 13th century BC during the Trojan War, the invasion of the Sea Peoples, to go ahead and eradicate the last races of the giants. And this is where we find in the Old Testament where the giants of the Philistines were only of the remnant of the giants. The actual races of giants were gone. Goliath had 3 sons. One of them had 6 fingers on each hand, 6 toes on each foot. Goliath had 2 other sons. They're also mentioned as fighting on the battlefield, but they're all called the remnant of the giants. So anyway, to answer your question, putting it all together, environmental factors are what caused giantism. And it was somebody in Babylon who invented the idea that angels had sex with human women to create a giant.
I agree with that 100%. It's just like when we talk about we're made in God's image. Well, obviously God looks like a human, right? I mean, it looks like whoever made us looks like us because we all look the same. Just like that makes so much more sense, honestly. What with the vapor canopy and even the more volcanic activity that you would have the giantism. Now with the volcanoes, what do you think? What do you think? What's your take on volcanoes? What are they? Why do they happen? There's the theory going around that this Earth is just a hollowed out mine, according to the what is it, the mud flood people. We're living in a hollowed out mine, and volcanoes are just piles of chemicals that are catching on fire because of chemical reactions or whatever.
That's a good question. I haven't really followed that. I've seen basically what you're talking about. I do have a really interesting quote from a book published in 1902 where a scientist is absolutely going against the uniformitarian body of scientists, and he published material. I just did a video about it recently on my 1902 video. I quoted him. This man went against the entire field of science, and he said volcanoes are not what we think they are. that says there's something else going on here, because the model that volcanoes are emitting magma and lava that's coming from the central core, and that the inside of our world is heated, is not true. He says we live on a shell and all the activity is within the shell. This is what the man said in 1902. And he was a scientist.
Well, there you go. In 1902, there's that year again.
Yeah, he said that in 1902. Well, the 3 books I did the video on were all published in 1902 about all the weird shit that happened in 1902.
Right.
So
1902 is a reset year, though.
Yeah, that was definitely a reset year. Hey, Hollis joined us. Looks like Hollis is back.
Might be all set.
Can you hear me?
Hollis, you're with us, sir.
Hey, you can hear me.
Wow, you made it.
All right. Yeah. Murphy's Law today, I guess.
Oh man, it's the story of my life.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Great to meet you, Jason.
Yeah, man, it's all good. Grognak, I can tell you had a question there for a minute.
I was actually going to ask a question for Hollis. So, I wasn't going to ask it, but we've been working on this theory that maybe the patron saints might have had this sort of gigantism. There's a lot of art that shows them looking like giants. They had extra human abilities, like superpowers. Did they get some kind of vapor canopy treatment or ambient radiation?
Okay, who are you talking about? Who are you talking
Patrons,
about?
like the patron saints, basically.
You talking about early Christian fathers and saints?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this would be okay. Well, you're not describing Roman Christianity. You're describing Byzantine, Eastern Orthodox Christianity. They gave a lot of these powers and stuff to these saints you're talking about and all that. Roman Christianity was pretty drab. I don't remember anything in Roman Christianity until after the Middle Ages, 14th, 15th, 16th century, that they started claiming that these saints had all these powers, right?
Weren't the Roman saints too? They were kind of like rebranded like Greek gods and stuff, weren't they?
That's what the Romans did. They took, it's like Old Nick. Old Nick is a name for a demon, and knickers were demons, and it later became Old Saint Nick. The church turned it into Old Saint Nick, and then Old Saint Nick became Santa Claus. But Santa is just an anagram for Satan. We have many examples of this with the Roman Church adopting all these deals. But what you're referring to, Grognak, I don't know, because listen, we have all these early church documents are forged. You can't think of a single early church document that's not forged. This is what the donation of Constantine revealed. Are you familiar with the story of the document called the donation of Constantine? Okay, I'm gonna educate my listeners real quick about this. Okay, a lot of people think that the testimony of Pontius Pilate before Tiberius Augustus Caesar, whatever, is an actual historical document. A lot of people believe that a lot of these documents from the early Christian church that talk about Pontius Pilate and different Dionysius, the Areopagite, all these things that confirm Christianity, they think that these documents are old, and they're not. They were all written by Christian monks, and this was all revealed when the church made a critical mistake. They had claimed that several of these old documents claiming Christianity was actually real were found. Here they are. Y'all can check them all out. However, some guy, I can't remember his name. I published it in my Chronicon. I can't remember the guy's name, but he studied one of these documents called the Donation of Constantine, an actual document that was centuries old that purported that Constantine, when he died, he signed over the Roman Empire and all his holdings over to the Church of Rome. This was 100% a fiction. The document existed. The document was hundreds of years old. But this guy, when he studied it, he noticed instantly that when the document quoted biblical verses, it only used the Latin Vulgate. This guy was a scholar, And he knew the Latin Vulgate could have never been used in the days of Constantine. Therefore, this was a forged document. The Latin Vulgate of the Catholic Bible wasn't even invented yet.
Right, I was going to say it didn't exist at that point.
When
Right.
Constantine was alive. So they go back and look at all these other documents, and that's why scholars don't even touch it anymore. You can't get academia to read any of these old deals. They know they're all forgeries. All this stuff was written by the church to make it look like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were real, and not originally the Greek stage play that was called The Sayings of Jesus, that was in the possession of a Turkish navigator named Marcion. And the original New Testament didn't have a single miracle. The original New Testament had no virgin birth, it did not have the crucifixion, it did not have the sun darkening, the earthquake, none of these things. The whole sun darkening episode was borrowed from the Phoenix phenomenon records of Tralles of Bithynia, who had actually recorded a real Phoenix event in 31 BC. So the church took all these older documents and they incorporated all these Phoenix sun darkening references from older texts. And then, just like when the Jews wrote the Old Testament, they omitted all the Israelite references and inserted Jewish names instead. The same thing the Roman church did. They omitted the original historians that were writing about Phoenix phenomenon stuff, and then they redated it to 33 AD. And anybody using a computer and using Eclipse software will see that no eclipses and no sun darkening ever happened in 33 AD. 33 AD is not even on the 138-year Phoenix phenomenon. Every bit of this was invented over 175 years after the alleged events were supposed to unfold. So people get mad at me. I get hate mail. I get emails talking about you're the son of the devil and all this. But there's no way you can get around the fact that we have in our possession today 10 manuscripts, 10 books from 10 authors who are all living in the days of Jesus, and not one single one of them mentioned the earthquake in Jerusalem. They were all there. Not one single one of them mentioned the sun darkening. No one mentioned any miraculous stuff going on. No one mentioned Jesus. None of this. In the Christian world, they're programmed to believe in these apologists, and these apologists are lying. They are only citing what academia has already determined are absolute interpolations in forged texts. And one of these is Josephus. It is widely known that no original copies of Josephus exist. And the reason is because the manuscript was sanitized. It went through church filters and was rewritten. And all of a sudden, when Josephus is found again, after centuries of being lost, Flavius Josephus' text all of a sudden now has something that not one ancient author who was familiar with Josephus ever cited. And every one of these original church historians would have cut their fingers off to cite this guy. They were all trying to prove Jesus was real. So they would have never not mentioned Josephus. They all cited Josephus, but they never mentioned the passage about Jesus that's found in the modern translations of Josephus. And this is why academia has already condemned the modern translations of Josephus, because the Jesus reference is an interpolation. We have the proof of that because nobody before ever mentioned it, and yet they all cited Josephus, and they never would have omitted that fact. The church has been busted over and over and over doing this. People don't understand how intense academia has studied these texts and found these lacunas and found these interpolations. Every bit of this story was manufactured. And in a personal level, I'm cool with it, because I don't believe that an eternal spiritual oversoul is ever going to require a physical avatar to go through excruciating pain and die and go through human sacrifice and going to go through all these things just to teach me a spiritual lesson. No, I don't need to be saved. I was never lost. None of us were. We're just here to grow. We're just passing through. I can just wear a t-shirt for the rest of my life, just passing through, and I'm telling the truth. Because that's all this is it's an experience. I say it all the time. It's a perceived reality. It's not an actual one. So I'm cool with what academia has found. It doesn't offend me at all.
Right. So
Jason,
Bill Hicks was correct. It's all just a ride.
It's all just a ride, man.
It's all just a ride, man. Yeah.
Uh,
Unfortunately,
Jay-
he's Alex Jones now. That's a whole.
How
other
do I
thing.
get that shirt, Grognak?
How do you get that shirt? Well, when
Yeah.
we start making, when we have our shirt guy make them again, I will definitely get you one. What size are
Oh
you?
yeah, man. Yeah, I'll pay for it. I just
You need one of
you guys
these.
know I collect T-shirts.
Hell yeah. Betsy, you like
Jason,
the
I
Paranormies
wanted
t-shirt?
to, sorry, I wanted to kick back to something about the medieval vapor canopy, right? There was a vapor
Absolutely.
canopy going.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Could you comment on like maybe some of these crazy ass medieval torture devices were like the only way that they could like harm or destroy some of these kind of like superhero people that might have been locked out of the historical record? So
Yeah, well, okay. Let me give some context to my listeners for who don't know. Okay, guys, I have often asserted that during the vapor canopy, it's very hard for people to die. Under perfect, pristine vapor canopy conditions, the human avatar is operating phenomenally, healing absolutely fast because of the oxygen, the diet, everything, the atmospheric pressure. You heal so fast. This is why the story of Cain and Abel, the very first murder, was very special to the ancient world, but today it doesn't mean nothing to us. People get killed every single day. But in that story, it had a particular significance that's being overlooked, and that significance is under the vapor canopy. If you kill somebody, you had to work for it. It's not an accident. You had to really work for it because they're already healing as fast as you hurt them. So this is exemplified in the Book of Revelation. In the Book of Revelation, outside the context of vapor canopy, much of the Book of Revelation doesn't make sense. And the Book of Revelation is cross-referenced with 1st and 2nd Esdras, which are both highly prophetic and explain the changes in the human body that are going to occur during the tribulation period. So the vapor canopy is explained with the return of the Phoenix in 2040, the sixth seal. But even after that, everything is reduced by a third. The sun, the moon, the stars, the day, the night. Vapor canopy has reduced everything. But it also states in the tribulation record of the Book of Revelation that people will seek death and not find it. So we have these. This is what I'm just providing context to what he's referring to, and what he's referring to is in the year 522 AD. It is the only year in human history the Nemesis X object and the Phoenix phenomenon occurred in the same year. Nemesis X is on its own chronology of 792 years. Its next appearance is in 2046. Phoenix is on its own chronology of every 138 years, but every 552 years, it's a big one. Well, 552 AD, the Roman Catholic Church, after everything was done and said, after 25 years, the Roman Catholic Church was able to repackage everything that happened. But this is what happened. The Phoenix phenomenon appeared, volcanoes went off all over the world, and it started what is known in the historical record as the Justinian darkness. 25 years of tsunamis, earthquakes, things falling out of the sky, the UK getting wiped out, half of North America getting wiped out, whole populations coming up vanishing. Some people believe the vanishings happened by the ground shaking so much, whole populations in their cities just sank into the ground like subsidence. So 522 is terrible. And we have many references as to what happened in the historical record. And remember, if something is true somewhere, it is probably true everywhere. And the reason I'm saying that is that for every historical reference that we find of something that is particularly heinous like this, you can imagine how many references didn't make it to the present, how many other texts that are lost that we don't have access to. This was terrible. It was described throughout the entire world. 522 was a 522, 523, 524. Sky dragons appeared in the sky. All this is described. I've got a whole list of stuff on my channel describing and with all the sources of what happened. Vapor canopy came back. but it was only here for 25 years. Exact blueprint for what happened on that same timeline, because 552 years before that was 31 BC, when the Americas were all destroyed during the Battle of Actium, when a great red sky dragon appeared over Egypt, and there was all kinds of fallout. It was the worst. It was the worst earthquake that ever afflicted Olympia, Greece, and Jerusalem in their histories. This is 31 BC during the Civil War, Queen Cleopatra and Antony against Octavian. So 552 years before that was 583 BC, when Thales of Miletus had predicted the sun was going to darken, and he was dead accurate. 552 years before that was the complete destruction of Atlantis, the invasion of the sea peoples called the Tuatha Danann that invaded Ireland, and 552 years before that was 1687 BC, which was also a 25-year darkness called the Ogygian deluge. So the Roman Catholic Church had altered the calendar, and they published this, and I published it on my channel. They literally published that they removed the old calendar of 552 years. This is what they said. And they had this guy, Dionysius Exiguus, create a new calendar. He is an agent of Rome. He was a translator of 3 or 4 different languages. He was a scholar. They had him invent a new calendar to hide this old calendar. His new calendar backdated all the way back to 2 BC, where he thought Jesus was born. This is what he did. This is a 522. He invented this calendar supposedly in 526, but there are no records anywhere in the world of this calendar until after the year 1000. So we have a huge discrepancy here, but what we do have are the historical records that the Catholic Church hid that Phoenix timeline. So what happened during that 25-year darkness is only speculation. But if we're going to go with the historical precedents, then we had the return of a vapor canopy with high concentrations of volcanism. So if the same thing happened at the flood, creating titans, giants, and all that. Same thing happened at the Ogygian deluge for 25 years. It gave birth to another age of heroes recorded by Hesiod. Heroes and giants that died on the field of battle during the 7 against Thebes, and then 30 years later during the Trojan War. The 10 years of the Trojan War, then 25 years of darkness during the Justinian plagues, then the 25-year darkness period of the Justinian plagues absolutely answers for us many of the Tartarian anomalies that are being published widely. This is your area. This is your massive Tartarian destruction here in 522. This is where the history of the world was literally rewritten, and we're missing whole centuries called the Dark Ages.
Jason, have you heard of this idea that volcanoes are actually caused by radium, and it's the radium that's being spewed out into the atmosphere that creates this like kind of superhero phenomenon, sort of. When you go back to the early 20th century, we have all these experiments with radium that show like massive growth of animals and flora.
The radium would be the ambient radiation I'm referring to. Then
there you go.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not educated on radium. I have no idea what it is, but it definitely sounds like something I'm going to start looking into. As a matter of fact, doesn't the archivist cover radium?
Oh yeah, he's got a great playlist on that subject.
I might need to look into him. I tried to give him a shot in the past. And then he's got some toxic relationships, and I'm not really cool with some of the people he deals with, so I just kind of stayed away.
Sure. Yeah, he ties it into he ties the radium into like the Marvel Cinematic Universe and stuff. Like all these experiments. Like if you learn a bit about radium and then you watch Captain America, like the first one, it's like whoa, it's big programming. So yeah, these guys have been. It seems like our overlords have kind of been programming the radium into the superhero stuff. Also, radium on the periodic table is raw. And if you get, this is from Ben the Archivist, if you get radium at a certain distance from you, it acts just like the sun. So you get a sunburn, and if you go too long, then it'll just melt you.
That's interesting as hell.
But if you're just painting wash faces, it doesn't kill you until you're 96.
Well, apparently they had a really high exposure level, and the first it didn't happen until 10 months or something of that going on. So yeah, we were talking the other day about Grubenikov and the bismuth in the beetle wings, the platform. Jason, are you familiar with that Russian guy that made the flying platform out of the beetle wings?
You're gonna have to educate me on that. I've never heard anything like that.
Okay, this Russian entomologist, that's insect study, I think, right? He found that beetle wings, when you put them like into kind of an electromagnetic field, they jump, they levitate. So this guy built a platform with a stainless steel Venetian blinds with beetle wings stuck on them, and he ran an electric charge into them, and he was flying. He made a literal flying platform. Yeah, and the thing with bismuth is that it's an isotope of radium, so it kind of goes back to some of the Vimana stuff and like how maybe some of the flight tech worked in the old world.
Wow.
Well, it makes sense to me that beetles would use electromagnetism to fly, because most beetles, compared to their wings, it's ridiculous, right? It's like a Volkswagen and, like some little girl's parasol, right? But these bugs manage to get that big, massive body off the ground. Bees are the same way, right? Bees look like they shouldn't be able to fly, and they, again, we've posted on our channel a couple times the levitation abilities of bees. It's electromagnetic, is what it is.
So yeah, they're like vibrating.
But
they're like generating a frequency that gives them buoyancy in the electrostatic field of the Earth. So they like get to that 8 hertz or whatever, and it neutralizes the the density in their bodies, so they can just go anywhere. It's pretty crazy with the studies with the bees, because they've
Viktor Grubenikov was his name. He's an entomologist.
That's right. Yeah. With the bees, they've put little sensors on them to track their trajectory, and they've found that they were completely immune from any wind. So over several miles or whatever, they're going a straight line with tons of wind going on. They're just like not affected by it. So that speaks to their ability to just be like, they're just creating this little field, this little pocket of negative density in front of them that lets them just go.
Sounds like a hummingbird.
Yeah, I'm sure they probably work the same way. I think a lot of things do.
I think hummingbirds do to a lesser extent, because of the fact that their weight ratio to wing size is a little different than bees, where bees have like, how thin are their wings, right? How small are they compared to the body size? Where like hummingbird, their wings are actually like I don't know, and birds are hollow, like and not to mention they're not real, right?
I got some hens here, and man, those things they're just egg laying machines. They got
them today. I know, I saw the video. Did you check your hens to make sure they're not CIA machines? I saw that video too.
Oh no, I'm way ahead of the game on that one. I checked them all. Well, we do a monthly check on the hens. Yeah,
make sure they're not recording our conversations or anything.
Yeah, I caught like 20 of them. They're gone. I fed them to the dog. So now I got to check the dog.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And there was something I wanted to ask about an hour ago, and I totally forgot. Jason, you did one of your things where like I need to take notes to your stuff, but I can't.
Well, I'm over here trying to wrap my mind around volcanoes and radium.
Yeah, man. It makes sense to me that with the radiation that you were talking about, the ambient radiation, and the fact that there is this the radium theory going on, and radiation. I mean, it makes complete sense, you know. And that if these volcanoes are some sort of just chemical reaction, again, like Hollis was saying, they're just isotopes, you know, creating different compounds that react with each other, and apparently radioactively.
Right.
Yeah, it speaks to the increase in the Schumann resonance too that we've been seeing. So like this is a real hot one here. Well, like figuratively or whatever. But if the Schumann resonance, if the amplitude of the frequencies of the Earth are going up, then those are going to excite the minerals in the Earth. And if you got like already radioactive minerals, elements in the Earth, and they're getting more juice to them, then they're going to heat up, and that could be what we're seeing with volcanoes blowing. So yeah, it's real funny, Jason, because you and me both last year in the summer, I had planned a trip to Hawaii for the beginning of August, and I saw that the Schumann resonances were starting to increase. And I said to my girlfriend at the time, we can't go there because I was freaked out about the volcanoes. And then you mentioned it on a stream, like maybe a week or two after. Yeah.
Wow.
And then we had Lahaina.
Well, you guys got me thinking. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When my mind starts because the ambient radiation is all I've ever called it to describe what is basically these scientists were talking about in 1902. They couldn't describe it. They never called it radium in 1902. Right. But it's you got me wondering. I might reach out to that guy, the archivist. You know what I mean? I just
awesome, man. I
don't mind. I just have a fear. I have a perennial fear of cross-contaminating the RKX output. I don't mind talking to other researchers and seeing what they got to say, but I can't. I'm really neurotic about my output, and I just don't want anybody to think I'm actually taking from somebody else's. But if something fits, I can't not mention it. You understand? So I'm just
oh, sure.
Yeah, man. I listen. I have never been accused of being normal, so I don't even know if anything I just said to you makes sense to you, but it makes sense to me. So,
oh no, totally. Yeah, I was like that with music back in the day. Couldn't co-write with anybody if my life depended on it. It was just you know. There's one more data point on there that I want to introduce for you. This just happened recently. This guy, Tom Callan, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He's a doctor. He did a stream where he's talking about this study that was measuring oxygen when it was going in and out of the lungs. And he found that, or not him, but the study that he was referring to, it found that there wasn't actually less oxygen. So oxygen wasn't actually going into the blood, but there was less charge on the oxygen. So this was finding that that the body was actually just absorbing the charge off of the gas, and that exhalation is the more important part of breathing, to get rid of this dead gas that's your body has taken the charge off of. So that, I think, ties in with a totally different way of looking at physiology, of the way that we're actually always absorbing like electrostatic radiation or whatever, but we're just in a period right now where it's much lower than it has been in the past. So like we're always taking in ether into our body, but during these vapor canopy periods, I guess, when there's this super radioactive material in the air, we're absorbing it, and then we can get superpowers. And if we're in good spiritual shape, maybe you start healing people and maybe fly around like Saint Joseph of Cupertino, that guy.
Yeah, I'm when I hear these references to, like Grognak mentioned, the early church saints flying around and things that sound mystical, like Aladdin in his lamp and his flying carpet and all this. Guy, I mean, you guys know I've said this 100 times on my channel at least, that it only takes us 200 years to go from horse and buggy to Hadron Collider. So when I hear these stories, I'm more apt to believe that the stories are deriving from a period for which a more primitive culture remembers something that was more technologically advanced, but didn't have the necessary communication skills to show that. I don't believe we've been technologically advanced once or twice. I believe we've been technologically advanced multiple times, and that the scrubbed histories that we have to deal with and work with have eliminated a lot of that from the historical record. I don't think that we were technologically advanced, every 138 years. That's never been my theory. I've never promoted that. But I do believe that the pre-Cataclysm period before 2239 BC, the reason why those who survived were recording their data on tablets, and they had to invent cuneiform fast so they could be able to communicate among multiple groups. I believe that culture, just like Leonard Woolley and Waddell published, that culture was very, very advanced, and they were the last survivors. Their jewelry, their metalwork, everything was advanced, and yet this is the first dynasty of Egypt, the first dynasty of Sumer, and they had the most advanced personal objects, but they didn't have anything else. And the reason is because they survived somewhere else. That infrastructure collapsed and was totally destroyed somewhere else. And I have to put that, I have to shelf that with other things that I hold to be true, such as I got a whole shelf right here of all the source. I have all the source book project books now. It's taken me 2 years to collect these books, but I have all of William Corliss's books now, and they are packed full of references to infrastructure that is buried in between 600 and 4,000 feet underneath the United States of America. That's something that happened that created hundreds and maybe even thousands of square miles of coal seams that are packed with metallurgical objects of exquisite workmanship that have been found deep underneath the United States everywhere. Now, I can't ignore that. I cannot ignore that so many discoveries of artifacts that have been found of metallurgical value so deep in the earth. I can't ignore that. I have to compartmentalize that with everything I know from the historical record. So we have these vast gulfs in time that we can't really put together, but we kind of can by virtue of imagination. We pretty much understand that there's a lot of references. I mean, going back to Ignatius Donnelly and many authors in the 1800s, they were convinced that the old world of Egypt and Babylonia and India wasn't the old world, and that these were actually the world the survivors gathered to, and that the true old world, which was advanced, was North America all the way down to the Panama Canal. This is what they were convinced of, and I tend to believe it from the traditional record and from the fact that during Sumer, Akkad, Babylonia, Elam, the Rashamric dynasties, during the first 17 dynasties of Egypt, the North America is literally empty. Literally empty. It's almost as if it's true. Every bit of that got buried, totally buried. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm just rambling now. I don't even remember why I started talking about that.
That kind of reminds me of I don't know if you've ever heard of the 5 eras theory. It's a Lucius Aurelian is another channel that we like to watch. He's got a theory that there are these 5 eras of history. We are in the 5th era, the plastic era, the modern era. The last era was Tartaria, and that ended in like the 1850s with the big reset was there. Maybe it was 1850, maybe it was 1902. I don't know. But then before that was the oh man, I should have pulled this up before was the Star Fort era, where all the Star Forts were built. And then before that was all the melted stuff that you see all over the world. You see all the melted brick stuff throughout the Southwest, throughout North America, or whatever. Actually all over the world, like including like Petra and all those things that are halfway melted rock, half buildings. And then before that was the era of the crystal trees and all the crazy ridiculous stuff that the giant colossal was the era of the silica era.
Well, where would you fit in this, Johnny? Because I've shown my own community, and I think you saw it too, but I have a video that shows over 150 fossils that should not exist. Animals actually fighting each other frozen in time. Animals giving birth frozen in time, taking bites out of each other. Jellyfish, which are impossible to fossilize, but they're still fossilized.
Right, there's that. That's just
I have a whole video about the flash frozen world, and what's crazy about it is many of the life forms were on the bottom of the ocean when they flash froze, and others were near in mountain ranges. So if something froze the entire world to a depth of 1.5 miles under the ocean to 1.5 miles above sea level, what the hell? How are all these same organisms in our backyard today? That was my subject matter of that video, showing all these flash frozen beings, and yet they're all alive. Every single one of these are alive today. So it's this is one of my signature pieces of evidence in sim theory.
Right. That's where I'm going with it. It has to be some sort of a simulation theory, because that just doesn't make any sense otherwise. Like, there's no other explanation for it other than it actually just happened. I don't know how it happened, but it happened.
Yeah, and like the Charles Fort stuff too. It's like seems like things get kind of glitchy sometimes, and like who's running the gears? That's a big question. Is it the machine elves, or are the DMT stoners right about something there, or is it way above us? Or
I am of the opinion that if I was to spend my life producing the evidence, I believe I can make a case for it. But I am of the opinion that this construct, we are on the outside. And we agreed to be here on the inside. And we have run different simulations, and each simulation is a different biosphere that requires different things from the avatar. And that the avatar, it's genetically able to adapt to any environment. And that I can say that there was a Tartaria simulation when it might not have been called that. It might have been called something else, but it had a definitive beginning and a definitive end. And that cataclysms and resets are nothing but the cover that hides the end of a sim and the beginning of another one. So I'm of the opinion that we've lived through multiple different biospheres and historical scenarios, and that the same beings that occupied the ancient Greek sim are the same that were in the Dark Age sim, the same in the Tartaria sim, the same in the modern historical sim, and the one that's in between them, I don't know. And the same that's going to be in a future tribulation sim when everything is falling apart. I am of the opinion that these avatars are nothing but the vehicles by which our personalities are traveling through something, and yet our personalities are actually attached to a real body on the outside of this construct. This is where I'm at now, and I'm not there not because I like science fiction, but because by spending my entire life studying the world we live in, and studying myself and my reaction to my environment at all times, and studying the historical record and finding perfect mathematical patterns which should not exist in nature, showing that there's no randomness. It's the only conclusion I can make is I am participating in some type of sim. And there's no way I've never been able. I mean, once you see something, you can't unsee it. I can't divorce myself from that belief anymore, because it would take a whole new series of data sets in order to pull me away from that. This is what all my research has concluded. Didn't mean to shut you guys down with that. Sorry about that.
No, you're good, man. I agree with you 100% that this, until something else comes up, this is the only, and normal people, you can't talk to normal people about this because they don't have any idea what you're talking about.
No.
Oh my God. Yeah. Just don't. Yeah. You said a mouthful there.
It's funny how it was like kind of a revolutionary idea of like Graham Hancock's thing. It was like, okay, we got to do something with this. People are asking questions, so they did this like 10,000 years ago. Yeah, but when you hear that it's like much sooner and it happens all the time, it really changes your view. Jason,
I get stressed with that dude.
Sorry?
I get stressed with that dude, Hancock, because
Yeah.
it's well, I mean, with the archaics material, I'm always showing my community that everything has to fit somewhere. So everything's got to fit somewhere. I cannot practice exclusions. So with Graham Hancock, though, I hate this fact that he promotes Younger Dryas Ice Age and all that, and then in a totally different book, as if nothing he's ever said before means anything. In a totally different book, he goes off and promotes, oh, look at this. In the 14th, 15th, 16th century, we got all these maps that show Antarctica. Okay, you don't get it both ways. You understand? You don't get it both ways. You don't get to promote Younger Dryas theory because that forces an interpretation that maps from the 14th, 15th, and 16th century that show what the world looks like underneath 2-mile-high ice caps. You don't get to say that these maps are 12,000 years old. Are you nuts? I mean, you don't get to. It's this man just. It's like he can shelve and compartmentalize data that totally opposes what he's trying to push. That's why I can't stand Graham Hancock. I just can't.
Sure.
Plus, he's ducking you. He's ducking you for a debate.
It all seems to come down to like the public needs some kind of narrative to run with. So they got their Netflix series or whatever, and the Joe Rogan, where Graham Hancock like looks like he's being oppressed within the academic community, and people won't debate him. I remember listening to him years ago on Rogan, and it was pretty compelling until
he borrowed that technique from his handlers. They've been doing that for 2,000 years.
Sure. Yeah. Something interesting on Mind Unveiled started a new series about Cathay, like China. And Jason, I wonder if you could speak about if you have any knowledge of the Boxer Rebellion in China, where it seemed like it was this like hidden world war that happened at the beginning of the 20th century. And there was like 14 nations that came into China to beat back these like kung fu fighters who weren't using guns. And the story goes that they were like calling down like the gods basically, and that they were impervious to bullets and all this stuff. I don't know if you can speak to that.
Did the Boxer Rebellion happen contemporarily with the Boer Wars of 1902?
I'm not sure, but it could be.
I gotta look it up. Hold on, Boxer Rebellion. I'm familiar because I thought the Boxer Rebellion was about the East India Company in the UK actually trying to force opium on the Chinese people. But I might be wrong.
Well, it was. And 1901. It was between 1899 and 1901. So yeah, right around 1902.
Yeah, 1902 is getting weirder and weirder.
Oh yeah.
Isn't it coincidental, you guys?
You got to check out that Mind Unveiled video, Jason. It would be great to hear feedback on that one because it's real weird. Maybe they got a little bit of a dose of radium or something.
That very well could be. Yeah, it says right here it started in 1890. Events started in 1899, but the war happened in 1900 and 1901, and then stability was created in 1902.
Likely story.
Wow.
They brought some democracy to the Chinese, I guess.
Right. Yeah, that's how it started. That's how it all started. They brought the democracy and the drugs.
Listen,
and the Jesuits.
I don't have anything negative to say about Mind Unveiled. Mind Unveiled, the presentations that I've watched are like top notch. I can't denigrate them. Can't say anything about it. It's awesome. Now, I was very honest when I did a critique one time about Mind Unveiled. The only thing I critiqued was trying to sensationalize the Cabbage Patch Kids when all my research showed there was no mystery in the magazines of 1910, 1920, 1930. were from conservative Christian venues, and it was very unpopular to even talk about where babies came from. And a lot of young women used to post the Cabbage Patch Babies. They thought it was cute and all that. But to turn it into a mystery that there was something else actually going on, I was kind of a critic of that. But was there something going on about the orphan trains and all that? Yeah, but back then the connection between the orphan trains and the Cabbage Patch Kids hadn't been made yet. This is.
I saw all that. We got into all that. I actually bought a copy of the postcard art that from that French book that the Mind Unveiled brought up. And it's very odd, the whole fact that the very first motion picture ever was about some lady picking babies out of the Cabbage Patch. I think that was because, and again, you're right, Jason. That was the thing, is that, you know, babies came from the stork in the Cabbage Patch. They weren't, you know, because of the was it Protestantism or whatever it was, they couldn't talk about where the babies came from, right? That's the story. But I don't discount some of the things that they said. I listen to all of the stuff. I take it all in, and I don't necessarily buy all of it, but you know.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying there's no mystery there. I'm just I haven't
we're
found
skirting around the topic of the homunculus a little bit. I don't think I've ever heard you talk about that, Jason.
Hey,
you familiar with that?
Is somebody's mic being scratched or something? We keep hearing it.
Yeah, somebody's mic's rubbing against somebody's shirt or something.
Yeah.
Oh, might be me. I had to plug in my phone. My bad.
That's yeah. Somebody in the comment section said it. Now I can't not hear it.
Hey, yep. That's how. Sorry about that. Yeah, Jason, what is your opinion on the phenomenon known as a homunculus, the baby in a jar or whatever you want to call it?
You know, that's another thing I just haven't really researched. That is the only thing close to that I've done some research on is the golem, but
okay.
I don't. Yeah, this is not my area of expertise. You guys probably know way more about this than I do.
We've actually just pretty much been following along with the Mind Unveiled, and then going back and watching their references, what they watched and looked at. So kind of if you've noticed that a lot of the community and this sort of alternative research community, whatever you want to call, I don't know what you want to call everybody, but it seems that a lot of times there's large groups of people kind of going in the same direction all at the same time. Like, you know, when like the mud flood started getting popular and the Tartarius thing started getting popular, there's this like bigger, you know, everybody kind of was like, hey, have you seen this particular video? It's like, you know, it's kind of weird because everybody's watching the same 6 guys or the same 10 guys or whatever. But Mind Unveiled's one of those. We found them a long time ago when we were doing the Irish roots of Christianity? Was that it, Grognak? Do you remember? We were doing the Connor McDarry stuff.
I didn't know you guys did a series on that one.
It wasn't a series. It wasn't a series. We just bought one of his books and started getting into that. It was like the Irish origins of something. Yeah. You remember that, right, Hollis?
Oh yeah. We were talking about that earlier in the week when I was on. Yeah. Are the ancient Celts, are they the Inuna, Jason?
Oh man, you're really trying to unpack a whole lot, and we don't have time for that.
Sure.
I'm gonna break it down to you as simple as possible, real fast. All right. You have a collection of writings we know of as Sumerian. All right. Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian cuneiform are recording events centuries after the events they depict. They're 100% ex post facto. The older ones are talking about a race called the Inuna who were bearded. The statues of the Inuna that are found among the Sumerians have them as alabaster skin, and they always use lapis lazuli for the eyes. Because in the Tigris-Euphrates basin, the only mineral, semi-precious mineral that was even close to blue that they had access to was lapis lazuli. So they also, just like Oriental people, when they in their art, when they draw white people, they always give us real big round saucer-eyed. This is how the Inuna were depicted in the art, which gave rise later to the whole legends of watchers, owl people, get big eyes and all that. But the truth of the matter is, when Caucasian people in their art represent Asiatic people, what do? We don't provide them the epicanthic fold that they're so famous for, that provides that curved almond eye. No, we just slit them out. We just give them 2 slits. So we're guilty of doing the exact same thing they do, over accentuating a physical trait. We give them slits for eyes, they give us round eyes. But these were bearded Caucasians who were very tall, and they had technology, and they had an infrastructure that was intact. And the Sumerians themselves racially separated themselves in their literature. They prided themselves on being the black-headed people. It's like Native American Indians. It would be long, jet black hair, raven black eyes, and very smooth skin. Because what separated them chiefly was not just the height and skin tone and jet black hair, but it was also the fact that the indigenous populations, just like in Egypt, could not grow a beard. They couldn't grow a beard. So even after the Anuna departed, even the pharaohs who wanted to show that they had the authority of the gods would always have a wooden beard, because even the pharaohs couldn't grow facial hair. So in China, they were called dragon-faced. The reason they were called dragon-faced is because they had a beard. Chinese dragons are the only dragons in all the world that have these long, elaborate beards. This is all it was. This is the dragon kings of ancient China, are no different than the Anunnaki kings of ancient Sumer. Not only that, but chronologically they perfectly match. Now, I've showed this in some of my presentations. But the Anuna were later, only after the Cataclysm, called Anunnaki, later to be called Anunnaki. This was centuries after they were gone. Now they've been turned into gods, when earlier they were just technologically advanced humans. Now they've become the whole object of worship and religion. So that's the main takeaway here. After the Cataclysm, though, they're no longer called Anuna where they're at. They're in a totally separate, different area of the world from the Near East. Now they are the Amuru. When they come back into the area as the Amorites, it was during the fifth dynasty of Babylon, and it was an absolute takeover without a military fight. These Amuru were so advanced and so feared because of their intelligence, and their infrastructure was just so perfect and intact. When they came in, they established all these states, starting with Mari and Mitanni, the Hittite Hattusis, and they came in during the reign of Amraphel of the 5th dynasty of Babylon, and they changed his name to Hammurabi of the 5th deal. And he, although he wasn't Amorite, he is the first king of the Amorite dynasty. They literally let him stay on the throne, but they took over. And all the Near Eastern scholars are in agreement. When the Amuru appeared in the Near East, they literally rewrote all the libraries. All these, they start Amorite syllabaries were published, and the ancient Jewish people hated these people. All throughout the Old Testament and all throughout the rabbinical writings, you will find the Amuru, which are just simplified as Amorites. You will find them demonized everywhere. But the truth of the matter is, these were the people that had the infrastructure, all the amenities, all the rights, privileges, and immunities. I'm going to tell you now, it's going to offend a lot of people, but I'm going to tell you exactly the situation was in the ancient world after the Cataclysm. We literally have an American population that has lost their infrastructure in a geographical area far away, now moving in and muscling their way into an area where they are unopposed, because the locals don't have the technology to deal with the incursions of more and more people. What I am describing about Sumer, Akkad, Elam, Mohenjo-Daro, the whole area, what I am describing basically is if 30 years from now, North America is wiped off the map, and suddenly cruise ships, oil tankers, aircraft carriers, Los Angeles class and Ohio class nuclear submarines show up at the tip Tigris-Euphrates basin, and all of a sudden, all these troop support ships, frigates, private yachts, Cessnas that are coming off of all these aircraft carriers, and all of a sudden, people from the United States just take over Iraq, bringing in all these troops, special forces, good old boys with their shotguns and their sons, and women carrying all the stuff of the households and protecting the kids, and a huge mass migration of people bringing their weapons that the locals are unfamiliar with, overwhelming technology, just a huge mass. This is exactly what I'm describing. This is what happened in about 19th century BC. This is what rewrote the histories of the ancient world.
And they've been mad at these people ever since.
They've been pissed off ever since, and this is why we literally have what is unfolded today.
Right.
I'm telling you now. I'm not going to name them. We already know who we're talking about. But right now, there is a massive info war, and the target is basically white people.
Yep.
The target is white people, and it's been going on undercover for about 80 years, real strong. But only in the last 5 or 6 years has most of the population started waking up that there is this huge war against them, and it's coming from multiple fronts, but it's all financed by the same people.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Did you remember that commercial for the assisted suicide in Canada? Like
Maids.
maybe. Yeah. And
it's one of my favorite things. It's maids. Like maids are like they're made to clean your house. You know, they might run around with a French skirt. You know, maids, right? No, medical assistance in death.
Well, yeah, in Canada, it's illegal to have like only white people in commercials or on TV programs, except for on the commercial for assisted suicide. So that's kind of a funny one.
Yeah, it's interesting times we live in, that's for sure. It's going to be a very interesting year. I'm just I'm not a prepper. I'm not a prepper. But I do agree with that each individual soul needs to be aware of their environment and the things that are going on in their environment. And it may not be true next year. It may not be true the years after that. But this year is a year that a lot of people, especially in Western countries, you need to keep some extra food and extra water available right now, because there's going to be a lot of attacks against infrastructure, because it all goes back to November of 2023. That right there is an event that is going to be the catalyst for a bunch of retribution that happens everywhere, even if it's not real.
Right.
Even if it's not real, because there's a fall guy here. And even if they're not even involved, they're going to be blamed for all these attacks, because the people that are running the show literally need an indignant and enraged America. They need Americans to be pissed and enraged, because what they're going to do is create basically a situation where the West is not going to resist when all the leaders say, okay, check it out. Let's get these armies together, get these invasion forces together. Let's go straight to the Middle East and retaliate for all this bullshit they just did. And it's a coup de grace, because the very people who orchestrated all this want that to happen. You already know. I'm not going to go into detail.
Right, but here's the thing about getting the United States pissed off is everybody's on fucking SSRIs. You know what I mean? Everybody's got DoorDash and SSRIs and weed delivery to their house, high THC content weed delivery directly to their house.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was funny. In Canada, they legalized weed like right before COVID, basically. It was a real easy way to get people to
all the weed. Now, I'm not anti-weed. Everybody knows I'm not anti-weed. However, like I know when I'm like, well, it's like, look, this is a very nice ice cream sundae you're giving me, and I know at the bottom there's poison. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I know what you guys are doing, but it's just, yeah, it's the thing. Like, pissing off America is going to be hard. It's going to be hard to piss off the average American, because the average American is fat, happy, and lazy. Well, I don't know about happy now, because
but this isn't an ordinary event. This is an event that will actually trigger the fundamentalists, the Christian fundamentalists here in the United States. You know, and that's a hell of a group. I'm talking about
I'm related. I'm highly related to that group. My entire family is like strongly connected in that those facilities. And I don't know. We'll see. I'd like to see that is something I'm gonna have to see for myself. Like I'm gonna be a doubting Thomas. I am Johnny Monoxide. I literally question every single thing. Grognak, do I not?
Birds aren't real, right?
I mean, well, no, I mean, I have chickens, obviously. I have chickens and the geese, and we have, birds are real to a point, but like, I think the birds not real thing, I think the birds not real meme was seeded so that they could do the bird drone thing that they're doing now, because they actually have bird drones that are actually like taxidermied birds that have drones in them. I think that was all kind of part of it, because yes, they do stupid shit like that. The CIA, the FBI, whoever you want to call them, they do stuff like that. They put memes out there. Obviously, they're all over the internet. Like half of your internet friends are probably FBI agents or CIA agents or Mossad or what is it, 8202, the Mossad internet group, right? Whatever. Anyways, nobody knows what I'm talking about. But yes, they put the memes out there for us to no, but birds are actually real, Grognak. Birds are actually real. You eat chicken, dude. Chicken is the bird. Stop it.
Yeah. Oh man, I love chicken. I couldn't survive without it.
Bro, I love chicken. We had chicken for dinner tonight. We had tendies day before yesterday. Like I love it. I have 14 hens that give us anywhere from 10 to 14 eggs a day. It's great.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, dude. We've got a rooster to make more hens.
Look, you do. Are you from? I know you got to be familiar with the what are the locusts, dragonflies and locusts? I've literally seen. I don't know if it's true or not, but I believe it was Popular Mechanics that had an article showing these real technological planes that look just like dragonflies going around taking pictures and recording audio. Going around taking pictures and recording audio.
Small as mosquitoes. These things are supposedly small as mosquitoes, but the dragonfly ones I've actually seen. Well, again, what with AI, how do I know what's real and what's not? But I've seen video of people remote controlling dragonfly drones. So I mean, it's a distinct possibility that they have the technology to do tiny flying mosquito drones that can, get you while you're sleeping.
Yeah, that's crazy.
What's the reason? Seriously though, what's the reason for making those? What's the reason? Why does the military need drones that are the size of a mosquito? What are you going to do with those, military?
I mean, they've already got all of us,
of course,
under surveillance.
Oh, 100%. We pay.
It's like you can't turn this off, even when it's off. It's recording everything.
Right.
That's right.
And you can't even take the batteries. I remember when you used to be able to take the batteries out and you're like, I took my battery out of my phone. It's not recording anymore. All right, cool. We can talk about stuff. No, you can't even take the battery out anymore. Haha. Dude, these new phones, like my wife's iPhone 27, whatever it is, the new iPhone thing, it's got no buttons or anything on the side. It's just like a shiny glass dildo. It's flat. You have to like tell it, Siri, turn off, bitch. And Siri's like, fuck you, I'm gonna record everything.
Man. Yeah, that dude, what is his name? Schlo. I can't pronounce his name. I got pictures of him, man. What's his name? The one his daughter, him and his daughter own the old dildo.
Rabbi Shmuley.
Yeah.
Yes. The guy literally he's a cross. If what was the guy's name from Master of the Universe? Gwildorf.
It looks like a leprechaun.
He looks like a cross between the leprechaun from the horror series Leprechauns, the Coomer meme, and like whatever the guy's name, Gwildor from Masters of the Universe. But he has a sex shop with his daughter, and has and actually used Candace Owens' name as a discount code. Like, as he's having I'm sorry, I've been actually seeing a little bit of this back and forth, and these are the people, and they hide behind. Yeah, never mind.
It's amazing. I'm gonna tell you what. Taking the Pornhub site down, Texas. I'm telling you, I've been predicting for a while there's going to be a huge swing toward ultra conservatism. It's going to really surprise some people. But also a lot of these things are owned by those people.
All of them.
Yeah, I think all of them are. Yeah,
all of them in that industry.
Yep.
All of them. Every single one of them. Every single one of them. And you can go back and it's documented the history in that. There's articles about the people who founded it and why they do what they do. And I'm not going to name any names, but there's a quote that says that they do what they do because they think Christ sucks. Literally, word for word. That's the quote. You know, and that's just crass. Like, I don't know. If you don't like somebody's religion, I mean, that's kind of shitty. It's kind of like, you know, the guy who was in charge of them gave them a list of 10 things, just 10 little things, right? 10 things. Don't do these 10 things and you'll be fine. 10 things. No big deal. They made 26 books of loopholes.
Yep.
26 books, thick books of loopholes to get around 10 little sentences. That's the kind of people you're dealing with. So to see that they would undermine an entire society using something like pornography, it's not a long way to go for them, you know.
Wow, it's crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, it is. Jason, your whole message about not engaging, you know, getting kind of a bird's eye view is, I think it's really, really valuable for a lot of people right now. Because I'll tell you, and I many thanks. I kind of came across your material with the Dark Scriptures playlist, sort of. I think I tuned into a stream and then I was going through your stuff and I was right down that, falling down that hill into the kind of Israelites or the Europeans thing. And I was like starting to observe Torah and stuff and looking at the world in a very strange lens of kind of transgressors and God's chosen people. And I really got turned around thanks to some of the things that you were highlighting there. And I think there's a lot of people out there who have a story like that in some degree of, you know.
I did. I came out of that world. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a dark place to go because you really start to get tunnel vision on these things. And I see so many people now, like especially on Telegram and stuff, and they're just kind of going for it. They got that hard angst, you know, of how everything's been going. So you're cluing into this dialectic shift of kind of letting Team Red off the leash for a little while, like. That resonates a lot and it makes a lot of sense. You know, it seems like the powers that be have all this power, but they're also magicians. Like they manipulate how to move energy. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense on this dialectic shift that's coming up.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy. It's a crazy situation. Papa Trump right now is getting this huge Christian Reich ready to start doing some terrible shit. I'm telling you.
Right.
It's coming.
That's Trump and the false awakening, right? That we heard about.
Yeah. I used to be a hardcore Trumper. I'm far from it now.
That's awesome. That's good. Hollis, you're talking about moving energies and stuff, but that's what they do. They use energies and they use events and different things to control large amounts of energy. And that's, in my opinion, that's another tick on the we're all one collective consciousness side of the board. Because if they can use all of us together to get all of our energy to do something, then that means all of our energy together means something.
Yeah.
You follow what I'm saying?
Somebody said, it's a dragon of hateful retribution. That's a hell of a handle.
Damn.
Said, at Risen, author John Lamb Lash has a video on his channel debunking simulation theory. Yeah, I kind of doubt that. I'm pretty sure he tried. Yeah,
the name sounds familiar. John Lash sounds familiar.
John Lamb Lash is like, he's wrote a bunch of Gnostic stuff about Sophia and all that, but he's had some meltdowns and I don't know. I'll kind of stay away from him. Unpredictable, so I'm not gonna. But he's debunking simulation theory. I mean, it's to me, it's kind of impossible,
right?
Because there's no way to prove simulation theory. If simulation theory could be absolutely proven, which we can't because we're in a subjective reality, then how are you going to debunk it? You could throw a bunch of opinions out there, but even I can't prove simulation theory, and I believe in it.
Right. No, 100%. I agree with you there too. I mean, like you can't it's like trying to prove flat Earth or any of these things that we you know, I mean, you can't prove simulation theory because you're in it. You
Yeah.
can't, you know, I mean, you can't prove the flat Earth because we don't have the facilities or the means to go to do the things that we need to go look at to prove it, to go up high enough, to go off far enough, or whatever, for whatever reasons, whether it be monetarily or the fact that you just can't.
Yeah, I recently did a video explaining to my community. Matter of fact, the title of the video is "Archaics Outside Simulation Theory," and I spent the whole video basically outlining all my positions in the archaics research and how not one data set requires simulation theory. Simulation theory is just a conclusion of mine based off all the material, but none of my research requires it. All the data sets stand alone.
Right.
So where does this nonsense with Sophia come in as like some kind of canon Gnosticism text?
I don't
like
know.
when was that introduced? Is that like Golden Dawn stuff or?
Yeah, I don't know.
What I'm talking about?
I don't even know. The Sophia, I've seen references to Sophia a little bit, but nothing major to where I don't know. Like, that's something you're just gonna have to look into John Lamb Lash on to find that out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But like I was just saying about the whole simulation theory, you know, like you can't prove it. You can't, like, but there's enough evidence to say, you know, to give somebody a solid enough foundation to believe it, right? Like you believe the simulation theory is true. I also believe the simulation theory is true. There's too many things that point to it for, in my opinion, for it not to be true, but I can't unequivocally, scientifically, you know, using air quotes, to prove it to somebody, right?
Yeah. There's no. I mean, you can't prove. There's no belief system that can be proved.
Oh,
I mean,
now you can't debunk it in the same way. You also can't.
There's some things that are axiomatic, but anything that's axiomatic doesn't require proof. I mean, such as I mentioned earlier today in a comment that dogs are canine, cats are feline, and the absence of light is dark. I mean, these are universals that we have to all agree on. I mean, there are things in this world. There's a real toxic philosophy that's circulating in the truther community right now about everybody has their own truth, and you have no business trying to step on somebody else's truth and all that. I am absolutely, completely not on board with that idea, because I know that if I hold a torch to you, you're gonna scream, because the truth that we share is that son of a bitch is hot.
Yes.
So there's definitely universals we all agree to. It's all the intangibles that we argue over.
Right.
So,
The my truth people are the live, laugh, love wine mommies usually, though.
Yeah.
A little different. Those people don't usually. Yeah. My truth. I don't know. I've heard people say things that like, well, maybe on the timeline that you're in. I'm like, okay, we're living separate timelines right now. We're doing this one.
Well, a lot of that programming's got to be just a intensification of the narcissism of the individuation, like the hyper individuation with the social media and the devices. And yeah, everybody's a public figure.
By individuation, you mean isolation into everybody's individual cell?
Yes.
Yeah.
Atomization
and individualization into your own little tiny little cell phone.
Yeah, it does that loop-de-loop around, with like you become so hyper individualized that you become like a drone
and part of
basically
the collective.
Yeah.
While being individual at the same time, because you have that, you know, your own particular case on your phone and your own funny t-shirt.
Oh yeah, and they got our algorithms all locked down.
Oh right, dude. Yeah, don't even get me started on that. The sentient world. What is it? The SWS over there at Purdue University, that's doing all the things to make sure everybody's doing the stuff that everybody wants them to do. I just found out. I forgot about this. That there's another collider, not just the Large Hadron Collider, but there's one at Stanford in California. I totally forgot about that one.
Huh.
Yeah.
Sometimes I
older.
wonder if these are like, these colliders aren't really what they're telling us they are. I mean, they actually have something to do with the increase of processing power for an AI that's already controlled. Roko's
Right.
basilisk is already here.
I believe that to be true. I think these are just especially the way that they talk about them, like Jordy Rose, when he talks about his quantum computers, and he's like, well, the conspiracy theorists say that we're in here doing like, we're talking to demons and stuff. I mean, we are, but that's not how it really works. Ha 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 ha. But like, yeah. I mean, yeah, and he just keeps going on like no big deal, and everybody just kind of like chuckles. Yeah, I'm in Silicon Valley.
Can we get a really quick summary of what the Roko's basilisk is, if I said that right?
Okay. Let's see. It goes back to the very first time I talked about it. I was doing a van vlog, and in my van vlog, I was just freestyling about 7 different scientific paradoxes that tie into the archaics research. And it's just a van vlog, but so many people were interested in one of the paradoxes, the Roko's basilisk. I ended up doing a lot more in another presentation. But
Yeah,
in a nutshell, Roko's basilisk started from just a scientific group of friends, and then they had some colleagues come in, and they did this think tank, and they said, okay, check this out. We're going to present a theory, and we want you guys to carry this theory to its logical conclusion. It's just a mental exercise. They opened up something that ended up getting 2 people psychiatric treatment. One of them almost committed suicide. So the story behind Roko's basilisk, because they all got together and in one meeting, one person presented the idea. So check this out. I want you guys to take it on faith. Just take it on faith that our world has already been hijacked by an artificial intelligence, and that already that artificial intelligence has been able to go through all our vast networks and all of our stuff. And because time space is only linear to us through our perceptive apparatus, the actual AI is not restricted to the barriers of time space. And in the construct, this AI can flow through information and actually find coordinates of events that have already transpired, but we're no longer participating in. And this AI is able to find out everything that's ever been entered into as data in the construct. He says, that AI wants to live. What do you think it's going to do? This was the AI. This is Roko's basilisk. This is what the question was. So they all go about their own daily business, but these were deep thinkers. That's why they were all invited. And real fast, they almost all unanimously came up independently with the idea that just through logical cognitive leaps, that Roko's basilisk, this AI, was going to go back into the field, into the coordinates, back to points in time where it could eliminate anything that would have brought it into existence. Anybody who is against certain ideas and all, and that it would mask these as other phenomena. It would create news events that would make sense to most people, but other people would look at the news events like, nah, there's more to this story than that. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. So Roko's basilisk would completely disguise its behavior and have everybody looking at others. It would have all kinds of scapegoats, and it would create a massive amount of chaos in the public sector, in the media, to cover up what it was doing as it was going into the programming of the construct and eliminating those who were going to rise up and try to oppose its existence.
So basically what's going on right now?
That's Roko's basilisk.
Yep. Oh, that's some was it T-1000 stuff, right? Like the Terminator.
But if we're already in a simulation, and then Roko's basilisk could already just be have been done, and just
yeah, my position is, because archaics is an acronym, advanced research of chronological history of artificial intelligence X. My position is that we are reliving through Sims and that we're on a loop, a programming loop. I've described this many times. What I just told you about Roko's Basilisk in my worldview already happened thousands of years ago.
Right.
So does that work on like an arrow of time thing? Like, can it actually go forward, or is it what you're saying more like kind of the Nietzschean thing about like time is a plate, sort of, and it's just going putting the needle down wherever?
I'm really not qualified to talk about the characteristics of time space. It's all theoretical to me. I don't know, but from the chronological data alone, I have been able to show multiple times and in many presentations that we're on a loop. We are absolutely on a loop. And we are living through this loop multiple times. But in the programming of the loop, there's all these drops, all this amazing information that when you put it together, it shows that there are new souls or new personalities coming into each cycle at the same time that there is an exodus of souls who have already looped through it multiple times being ejected. And that one of the qualifiers for ejection is waking up to the idea that you're actually in an artificial construct.
Well, there you go. Yep.
Yeah.
This is what I postulate in many presentations and from many different vantage points.
Do you think there could be an element to it of like graduation, sort of? And I've been thinking of it in terms of kind of like becoming coherent with if you want to call it the oversoul or something. Like in the Colburn, what they talked about with like after you die is you enter into this place sort of where either you can handle the light of God or you burn like a worm or something. So if your soul is like, you know, isn't too polluted and you can handle that level of energy of being able to exist kind of on that plane of existence, maybe. Because when I think about all the axioms of Christ, and it rhymes a lot with the Tao Te Ching. I've been learning recently as well of being in this flow state, sort of, and you know, like it's in Matthew. I can't remember the chapter and verse where Jesus says, "If you don't change and become like a child, you won't see the kingdom of heaven." And these kind of axioms that kind of speak to necessity of you know, kind of aligning and having a level of sanctification to yourself to be able to be in the presence of this super high voltage like kind of field that maybe exists above our realm. That's just something I've been thinking about lately, and when I've been kind of implementing that in my own life, things are getting a lot more ordered. I find like what they would call like kind of like being with the Tao. And
I'm gonna listen. You're speaking my language. You're just doing it with a totally different vocabulary. I'm gonna explain, because it is a fundamental belief of mine, and I'm always conveying this, trying to get people to understand that. Listen, we exist right now in two completely separate coexisting realities at the exact same time. Here is a sphere of reality that has its own protocols and programs, subroutines. Here's another one right here. When they overlap and interface, we're in the middle of that. And one of these is the collective. And the collective has many things that are axiomatic, such as I described. Dogs are canine, cats are feline, fire burns. When you turn a light out, it's dark. These are universals. We all have to agree on them because they're truths. They do not change. In that collective is collective unchangeable programming, historical routines and subroutines that remain fixed over eons when they're on a loop. This is the collective. The collective is subdivided into dungeon programming. Dungeon programming are philosophies and belief structures that people attach themselves to, which allows the AI not to use so much processing power because those strictures are already heavily coded. Now, the other reality you exist in is the highly personal. This is the only place that the magic happens. This is the one that you absolutely control. This is the one that you can actually make the collective field around you interface and change, and you can create the dynamics of your life. You can create the conditions of your life, literally making a field within a field to where you are impervious to everything around you. You are untouchable. You are not contaminated by the collective poisons that are all around you affecting other people. It's these highly individualized souls that make their own way in this reality. These are the ones that make everybody else uncomfortable because they sense in their presence, just being around them in public, just looking at them, they just sense something's wrong. And it's normally the wrong thing. They normally have an aversion. They normally have like, oh man, I ain't getting near that dude or whatever it is. Or sometimes they have the opposite reaction. You're completely invisible to the collective. When you're vibrating on such a high frequency, you're not even in their reality. It is almost like when the Aboriginals saw Captain Cook's ships at first. Well, first of all, I just lied to you because they didn't see the ships. When Captain Cook's ships first sailed off the coast of Australia, the Aboriginals didn't pay them any mind. They didn't see any ships out there. Ships were so alien to their mindset, they had no frames of reference whatsoever. They were asked later on when they found a local New Zealander interpreter. They were asked later on how come we've been out there for days and you never saw? They were told over and over, we never saw anything until people started coming ashore, and then they averted their eyes because they thought white people were ghosts. And they thought it was disrespectful to look upon the bodies of the dead. So they averted their eyes. And the English had a real problem trying to deal with the Australian Aboriginals at first because it was so these issues. But when they started translating and months later and everybody's communicating, they found out from the beginning that no Aboriginals even knew any ships were out there. They had no frames of reference to know what they were, so they didn't see them. This is the same thing we live in two separate realities, and often we come into contact with people who have no idea that the information that we have accepted to be true is completely antithetical to anything they've ever even conceived. Therefore, we're almost invisible to these people.
I mean, I guess it's like Taoism.
Well, they say that the ruler should be basically invisible, like you can't even detect that he's there, and everybody thinks that they did it themselves when like everything's in place until they leave, and then you notice their absence,
right?
And then you get the cargo cults, right?
Right. Well, yeah. Then you get Rhodesia, and you get Zimbabwe, right? Then you
yeah,
dirt cookies in Haiti. You get barbecue, man. You get barbecue wearing. I don't think that was barbecue's originally his chain. I think he might have ate the guy that was originally wearing that.
You talking about Haiti? Yeah.
Talking about barbecue, yeah.
Come on, man. Listen, you know it's a psyop.
I know it is. I know it is.
Wearing this big ass Freemason symbol right here. His name is Barbecue.
No, hang on, Jason. Hang on, Jason. I have worked with many Prince Hall Masons, right? And those dudes roll up with the purple velvet jacket with the big Freemason cross and compass on the back, and they wear the big. I've worked with a lot of Union brothers that are Prince Hall Masons that they flaunt. Ridiculous. They're the only Masons that wear. Snoop is a Prince Hall Mason, so like he wears. So I mean, I guess I could see it but at the same time, I'm pretty sure Barbecue ate the guy that originally owned that.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. Our next video, whenever Alt Skull can join us, if it's next week or the week after that,
it's gonna be a couple weeks. He's got family in town for a while.
Okay, well, this is what I want to do. What I want to do is we're going to do the Rocco's Basilisk scenario, and we're all going to offer. So go ahead and start collecting them now. But we're going to go ahead and offer as evidence all the weirdest stories that have been unfolding in the last 4 years. All this stuff and trying to piece this together. We'll do it live for about 3 or 4 hours right here on YouTube, and just using all the weird stories unfolding in the last 4 years. Let's see if we can't see some type of activity of an AI that's trying to cover something else up. How about that?
Sounds good, bro.
Oh yeah.
I'm down with it. I'm gonna have to cut this video short because I got to go to the bathroom.
Same, man. I gotta go with you. Also, I'm getting dirty looks from the family down the hall. So.
Oh yeah, so let's go ahead and cut it short, man. But Grognak, it was good seeing you again and good meeting you, Hollis and Johnny Monoxide. It's always good. I'm gonna go ahead and close this video out, and yeah, get with me in the emails because that's a video I want to do soon. I already got a whole bunch of stuff we can talk about.
Hell yeah!
Awesome.
All right, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and
Thanks for having us.
I'm gonna go ahead and clear the board and do my outro. I'll holler at y'all later.
Take it easy, brother. See ya.
All right, guys. That was a great show, but I got to use the bathroom. I'm gonna go ahead and hit my outro. I love you guys, and y'all need to jump on over to Archaics TV and join me tomorrow for 2 presentations. You're gonna like them. Where he is? There he is right there.